have anybody in serious condition or
No,
something?
no, it wasn't anybody hurt. Yeah, no, just yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Tiff?
Mayor and council, I don't really have a whole lot. I help out where I can and hopefully keep all of you guys organized and moving forward. So.
Paula?
Mayor and Council, there is a memo in your packet regarding the audit and the auditors.
Mr. Fitzer?
Nothing, sir.
Okay. Brock, you got anything for us?
Oh, we're trying to get the YouTube thing going.
He was standing right there.
Video sticks. That's good.
Okay. So, do you have anything for the council around the room? Good stuff?
Yes. As far as economic development, we're having more and more people have interest in Mountain Home for more commercial and industrial opportunities. This last Wednesday, I had a meeting with Project Excellence. They're seriously considering Mountain Home, Twin Falls, North Salt Lake, and Reno, Nevada. It would be an employer that would bring 350 jobs, pretty competitive wages, $20 to $25 an hour. So we've been working with them, making sure they have all of the best information they need to understand that Mountain Home is a wonderful place to be if that's what they so desire. Other than that, we've been facilitating a lot of the housing projects that are going on. So we do the preliminary plats, and then the next step is looking at the construction documents and also doing the final plats. So we've been doing those and just staying busy, Mayor.
Fantastic. Council, you got anything for the department heads? Council women? Sorry, woman?
Nope. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Brock. With that, I'm going to run down to item number 1 on the agenda, recognizing of Planning and Zoning Commissioner James Estridge for his service to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So, Brock, I'm going to let you take this.
Thank you. James, can you come over here, please? So, James Estridge has been a Planning and Zoning Commissioner for the City of Mountain Home for a little over a decade. He's given tremendous service. And as a commissioner, I can tell you he was very astute. He read the reports. He had very thoughtful questions, and he brought immense value to the commission. He's going to be missed. I hope he enjoys retirement. I understand he has a piece of paradise up in Pine, and he can spend some time with his sweetheart as well, and hopefully not cause her too much grief.
Yeah, ain't gonna happen.
But we want to give you this plaque, James, and we just want to thank you for the selfless service that you have given, and we're going to miss you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. One more for good measure.
Wow, Brian.
There we go.
I was thinking up Thank you.
Hey, James. Thank you so much. You know, I've been here the last 6 years, and you've always been a good good ear to talk to, and so I appreciate all the service you've done for the City of Mountain Home. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Alrighty. We're going to run down, and department heads, you don't have to stay if you don't have anything that's not on the agenda, or that's on the agenda if you don't want to, but with that, we're going to run down to recognize a person in the audience. Please limit your comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. Would anybody like to come down and speak? Come on down.
Packed house today. I'm John Kruger from 410 West 3rd North. Councilman, councilwoman, Mr. Mayor. You sit here before us, charged with pending charges. You know what they are. We all know what they are at this point. The gall that you have to sit here in front of all of these people, all of these citizens, and corrupt the integrity of this city council astounds me. I'm going to ask you to recuse yourself from this meeting and allow the council to maintain its integrity while they conduct the business of the city. Would you do that?
No.
And to me, that's on its face the honor that you hold and the lack of integrity that you hold as a person.
Okay.
That's on the record. Everybody can see that. Everybody can hear that. We all know. I would prefer that we actually have a city council that we can actually rely on and count on the integrity of. And I'm sure that you all as council members will represent us with integrity. However, you have a compromise vote among you. And I hope you understand that.
Would anybody else like to get up and, come on, Mr.
Hi, I'm Paul, 1195 South or West. I work for AR Taxi and Transport. I just wanted to thank the city for patching those holes and those cracks. And also just get the word out. If anybody needs transportation for any patients, witnesses for the court, anything like that, you guys can contact me. And thank you very much. We are open 24/7.
Thanks, Paul. Go on down, sir.
Hi, I'm here on behalf of Mellon Subdivision.
Which
We've
one?
been
Sorry.
on the
Will you state your
Mountain
name, sir? Sorry.
Steve McMillan.
Steve McMillan.
We've been on the city water supply for a good 3 months now. The problem was the pump house electronic module went down. We ordered another one. It came from China, from Siemens, and it must have been on the slowest boat from China I've ever seen. We finally got the darn thing in. Naturally, it didn't come without the module controller. That took another week. We got that in. The electrical engineer has been working on it now for 2 weeks, only to tell me it doesn't work. This is not working. Now they're telling me it's the pump. Well, it's not the pump. Now they figured it out. They think it's the wire going down to the pump. So I've got the guy who put the pump in 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago. He's in Grandview tomorrow. When he gets done there, he's going to come up here, meet with me up here, run some tests on it, 'cause I don't really want to pull that pump if I don't got to, you know. So that's basically where we're standing right now. As you know, the guy that usually runs our pump house is Ron. He passed away Friday. And I'm just the relief guy, so I got kind of thrown in the deep end here. So we are working on it as fast as we can. That's about as best I can tell you.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Tiff.
Yeah,
Mayor,
'cause
Council, Steve
I got
reached out to Hank this morning with everything that's kind of unfolding. I did talk to with their.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
Thank you for the explanation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Thank you very much for coming.
folks.
Thank you. So, their treasurer, I was able to reach her last week in regards, like Steve said, Mellon has been on our water source since September 16th. Probably going into the warmer months is not going to be a good thing for us. But we did ask him to come to give you guys that information, so then eventually you guys can make your decision, just so you know.
Would anybody else like to get up and speak? All right, hearing none, we'll go down to conflict of interest. Has any council member received information pertaining to or otherwise had any conflict with any person regarding any items on tonight's city council agenda? If so, please set forth the nature of contact.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Stokes?
I had a conversation with Mr. Cherry about leases and nonprofit organizations and the like. And I also read an email from Rena Kruger that has nothing to do with this agenda.
Councilman McCain?
Myself also.
Mayor,
Ms.
I
Ms. Garb?
received an email from Tracy, and also I've spoke with Brock as well.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I spoke to Brock. I didn't know we disclosed city
Not
employee
staff.
stuff.
I was wondering.
Okay. Run down to consent agenda. Councilman, do you want to talk about anything that's on the consent agenda? Ask city staff, pull anything. It goes all the way to I.
Mayor,
Councilman McCain.
I'd like to pull H for discussion.
H. Okay. Anything else, Councilman? Councilwoman as well, sorry.
Nope, that was it. I wanted H2, so.
Mayor,
Bruce,
Council, I was just noticing to actually just right now, I was looking at that on the, on L about the JUB, the contract with that. I think I also put in my, the memo on the bottom of it, if you could also approve us to go out to bid when we get that, so, I think I had that on a memo, but I didn't know, do I need to bring that back, or is that?
No, if it's part of what's in the packet.
Yeah, it's part of what's in the packet, it's fine. So there's kind of two of them, ask the mayor to, you guys' approval for the mayor to sign the contract for the engineering, and then also to approve, to go out to bid when we're ready to go.
Yep.
Anything else, council members? Mr. Council Member, Councilman Brennan, sorry.
Thanks. Question about item D, the budget transfers. I wasn't able to get into talk about this specifically. I recall in past years transfer from or transfer to economic development and the golf course. I don't recall fiber and recreation. Can you speak to that,
Sure,
Paula?
I think it explains it in the annual transfer memo. Council approved this request during the October 25th, 2021 meeting. I have those minutes. That's regarding the fiber one. Is there any other questions?
The transfer to recreations to cover the pool.
Right. That was during the annual budget process.
When is it, or where is it described to us that there's actually like a transfer mid-year? How many times is there a transfer?
Councilman Brennan, we do the annual transfer every year in January.
Okay. Just one, it's a one-time deal?
Right, but you may have additional ones from those ARPA funds regarding the fiber, those were approved.
Okay. Well, what was it that was approved? Just, was that kind of our debate about using the ARPA funds?
Councilman McCain made a motion to approve allocations of the American Rescue Plan Act funds to fund both water and fiber departments. The motion was seconded, it went through it was recorded and it was finalized.
What was the roll call vote?
Councilman Stokes, nay. Councilman Brennan, nay. Councilman McCain, aye. Councilman Bundy, aye. Vote being tied, the mayor voted aye.
Okay.
Motion was carried.
Okay. Mayor, I'd like to remove that item from the agenda. Item D. From the consent agenda.
Remove it completely?
From the consent agenda, yes.
And pull it then.
You can put it on new business.
Okay. So Councilman,
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda, pulling items D and H.
Second.
So there's been a motion to approve the consent agenda as printed, pulling D and H.
Second that.
It's been, sorry, it's been motion and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Councilman Stokes?
Aye.
Councilman McCain?
Aye.
Councilman Brennan?
Aye.
Councilwoman Garvey? All right. So let's run down to old business, action item, legislative continued from the January 24th, 2020. Council members, what would you like to do on A?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Brennan?
Mr. Urquidy.
Yes.
We had a chance to talk a little bit ago, and as I always think it's important, I'd like to, have our private conversations become public, oftentimes, right? So that the citizens that we're making legislative acts for get to understand the depths of it. So, could you just speak about the projected revenues and what would come from our almost 5% raise request that you've given to us, and how that would be spent and whatnot?
Mayor, Council, I kind of put together for Councilman Brennan quickly this afternoon kind of a little thing that has each of the budgets. So from when we had the different ones. So from the 18-19 budget to the 19-20 budget, when we went from our base rate went from 1925 to 2020, that roughly was about $250,000 increase in the revenue. for the, in the maintenance for the water. And that's kind of when we started doing things on that one, because, you know, when we looked at the master water plan, and to be able to do the projects that we have to get things designed and then get them put into place, we needed to make sure that we have, you know, sufficient funds to do that, and also have sufficient funds to make sure that we can pay all of our loans that we have, and what's going on with those. So then, the next, so when we went from the 19 to the, the 19 to the 20, well, the 20 to the 21 budget, that one was our more significant increase that we had, and that one brought in, it changed it about a little over $600,000 in that one. And then so from this one, asking what we were doing for the 5% or whatever, and again, I can only kind of project 1.5 out of the previous year's month. That's kind of what I did, so, because I don't have a full year for that budget. So that's somewhere about $270,000. So that's what we would be increasing our maintenance line to be able to, you know, to do our projects. Some
Rich,
of our,
was that wastewater? Dude?
that's just water.
Just water for
Just talk-
270?
Yeah. So kind of a couple things, I mean, from that, what we're looking at doing is, you know, we've had some, you know, we had designing well 17. We're looking at College Park, the design for College Park. So those are the professional fees that we've been, you know, doing with that, with this project right here. Besides just our normal maintenance with different things going on, meters and yeah.
Cost of goods goes up.
Yeah, everything, just doing our job every day. Some of the jobs, some of the things that we had for like the well preventative things that we had from this one, that this summer we're going to look at a couple wells where right now we just basically open some louvers and we let the air run through there. But we're going to, but it's sometimes we have to open it up because when those wells are run in the summertime, it gets pretty hot in the rooms. So we're going to switch those over to air conditioning in some of those. So that was one of the projects that was in our master water plan to be able to do. Also, we're going to be able to start our College Park project, which we haven't bid that out, but that's probably going to be somewhere, you know, $800 to $1 million range to be able to do that. So those are some things that we had from those. And then also putting in, you know, being able to, what's my other one I had on there, sorry, well 17, just again, the one thing that's nice is that you just approved from before was using the ARPA funds to help to do some of our water projects. So we are going to use that to, this summer, to put in, to drill the well itself. And I don't know if I think I put that on here. We figured just drilling the well and getting everything done with some of the things we're going to do, that's going to be somewhere in the, I've already got somewhere in the $300,000-$400,000 just to get the well just drilled itself. So, and then pump test it. That's really all we're going to do with that to start with. So those are some of the things that, you know, we're looking at doing with the different increases that we have.
And then we also explain the debt.
So yeah, so to make sure that we have, you know, we have to have our loans that we have $182,000 each for some of our earlier loans that we have from DEQ. We have a loan for well 16. It's about $117,000 that we do each year, and then our tank B. The new tank that we put up there, it's about $176,000. So, and on some of those, we have to be able to have in reserve those payments. The DEQ asks us to do those. So, you know, that's what we have with some of those different things. So that's just kind of.
How many years does that DEQ tank loan go out for?
I can tell you. Just 1 second. I have it right here.
20 years.
I got to just get something. I have it right here. Oops, there it is. The DEQ. Let's see. I'm sorry, I have it right here though. Well, 2040 is the final payment for the tank. Well 16's final payment is in 2033, and then paying off, I believe that was the Haskett project. I don't know, that's before my time, but that's in 2027 that one's paid off. Is that what that one was? Hasket transmission line, I think that's what that was, so.
I thought it was for well 15.
I just
At,
know I think you
Richard Gary Park, well,
I don't know which ones they were. It could have been, but that one's paid off in 27, so.
we can get that information to council just so everyone.
But those are our big ones.
Can I ask you to clarify, are you talking about wastewater
That's just water.
or water?
That was water.
Okay,
I'm gonna move into wastewater right now if that.
because A is wastewater.
Oh, was A wastewater?
A is wastewater. That's why I was like,
Oh, I'm
wait a
sorry.
second, this isn't jiving here.
I didn't see which one was A. I wasn't.
That's all right,
I'm
that's all
sorry.
right.
Okay.
Well, once we
there's-
jump to B, now we're going.
All right, here we go. So that was B. So I answered your B questions
giving my
because you're
blonde
gonna
hair.
ask the same
Killing
thing,
me.
I'm sure. So I'm sorry.
That's all right.
So wastewater, so when we started our increases with those, and that, again, that one we had to really do because it was really behind. I mean, we had a lot of things we were, a lot of the projects that we had to do that are availability like things where for growth, we had to pull it out of our regular maintenance things to help pay for growth because we were so far behind with some different things. So,
Let them know that we were using availability funds to offset the true cost of what it really
yeah,
costs.
we were using our maintenance fund, correct, our enterprise funds to help balance out growth, and that we don't want to do that. We want our growth to pay for itself, and so that was, and because they were just so far behind with where we were with different things on that. So, looks like you have a question.
I do. So,
Councilwoman Garvey?
yes, excuse me. When we talked about this, you said that water, when we kind of did some calculations, the water increase was equivalent to about 175,000. Did we change? We're just a tad off.
And I think so. And I think when I was looking at those, I didn't really look at. I guess what I was looking at was how I can't think of how I was explaining that. I don't know if when we were first looking at that, if I was looking over a January to a January one instead of just a budget cycle. So that might have been where that was, and I think that's where I kind of messed up when I was talking with you on that.
Okay.
So
what are the wastewater numbers?
So wastewater is, so when we did, so from the 19 budget to the 20 budget, it was about $301,000. When we went from so that was kind of our first middle-sized jump. Then I think we had actually a bigger jump the next year, which it shows that it was. From 20 to 21 was about $441,000. And then, so asking, excuse me, asking with this one, and again, being able to project, I just have to project from March to September because I'm just going off of the previous ones and adding 1.5%. Or multiplying 1.5%. It would be.
It's 1.05, right?
1.05, excuse me, thank you. It would be, because 1.5 is 50%, yeah, that wouldn't be very good. It would be good for our coffers, but yeah, it would be about $241,000. It's kind of what that 5% for wastewater would be. Some of the projects, I can kind of go through that. Some of the projects we're looking at with those that we have going on is, we're going to look at doing let's see, in this budget cycle, we're working on looking at projects. The first big one that we have is looking at 6th Street by the hospital. We want to change that sewer line. It actually goes underneath the hospital, which it shouldn't have. I don't know why it ever did that, but so we're going to switch that line and bring it down 6th Street. And so that's the big one we're going to get in design so we can do that in the next budget. So that's what design is. So basically for construction things, it's just little things more like right now it's just the master plan, kind of looking at finishing those things up. We wanted to get an updated master plan so we kind of know which projects really to hit. Water, we already had it kind of doing this, but we know we're going to have to look at the lagoon. That's kind of the next thing that's going to be in design in this year also. They're going to kind of start looking at designing the lagoon. And they're going to use that kind of off of our master plan because we're kind of looking at a couple different options what we're going to do with that. So we're not really sure what we want to kind of do on that piece. So it would be more like next year's budget when we really start hitting into this constructing the 6th Street project. We do have some different things that are doing out of our other projects. Stormwater is out of our wastewater budget. So looking at some of the different stormwater projects that we have in our street projects, that's gonna come out of this when we do those, so. hope that
Councilman Brennan?
questions.
Just some follow-ups. The amount that we wrote down, I understand that this is like a complete estimate based on projected water use, in the range of $511,000 for an estimate. And I guess I was not in support of the major water hikes that we did over the last 2 years. Those are pretty hard to take. Although I do believe I made comment that I do agree with a very regular small increase to keep up with the cost of goods, so to speak, since this is a maintenance line budget. But I think it's safe to say that you're asking for, I'm rounding up to 5%, but the cost of goods are not at a 5% increase as they were last year. Is that safe? I mean, everybody talks about inflation. I don't know what inflation numbers are. I keep hearing 7%. I don't know if that's true.
9.
Mayor, Council, I think that you're correct. I mean, when we just look at the price of pipe, it's probably gonna over 30% just on the price of pipe. But when we project some of these, when we look at our master plan and we project the rate hikes, what's kind of going on, we're looking over a long term. So, it's one of those things where if we kind of keep doing the small increments each year, then there might be some things where we might need to back off something on a project, but we can bump it into another one when we kind of get there. So that's kind of the goal, is hopefully we can stay at 5%. That is our goal in the long term, to be able to do. And so to be able to do the jobs that we can do. It's one of those, when we get to a spot where, when we look at our master plan and say, oh, we might have to bump that up a year to get some reserves so we can do that in a future project, instead of, like in the CIP is basically a moving document. So we move things with it all the time, depending on how much we have in our revenue and what we're bringing in and what we can get constructed. So, because we know engineering costs and construction costs are going to keep going up, and especially now that there's funds out there for those things. And just to, we might get it engineered, but we might not be able to do it for a while just because we can't get workers to do it, because they're doing a lot of other jobs and different things. So it's that long term that we're looking for, and not just the short one. We really had to do those short, hard ones to get ourselves where we could get back into the long term. And I think that's a good question with that.
Do you feel that this will, I guess looking forward, right? You're talking about looking forward next year. Mm-hmm. Do you predict another 5% next year? Or you say pipe is roughly a 30% increase, so.
Mayor, Council, right now, yes, we plan, if we look at the long term, if it's hard to tell, I would think things keep moving in all over the place, but that's our plan, is to keep asking for just a normal 5%, and then if we'll work our projects around that. I think that's fair. We want to be good stewards of our money, and I think that if we have to put off projects for maybe, a year or two to get us back to where we can with our, the one thing we don't want to do is we don't want to just collect money and save it and not be using it. That's not what we want. So we want to make sure that we're collecting the money, that we can use the money that we're getting and what we have in our reserves to help us to get our projects, to get us caught up, and then we'll just keep working forward. So, and that's kind of where we are from that.
Thank you.
Sorry I did water first and not wastewater. I'm sorry, I wasn't reading my black packet very well.
Council members, got anything else for Mr. Urquidy?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stowe?
I have a few questions, Mr. Urquidy. Do you have any cost estimates for the 6th Street project, and then the lagoon, as well as other stormwater projects? My thought has always been, if we're going to get this big lump sum of ARPA money, we save the taxpayers 1, 2, 3 years, and are you funding these projects from availability funds?
Some of them will be from availability, and some of the growth things would be from availability. But if we just have to make Mayor, Council, I'm sorry, if we need to, and again, like we said, sometimes we have to offset a little bit if it doesn't hit, if we don't have that. But growth things would be things that when we have to expand a line or we're adding things to our system. So otherwise, it comes out of regular maintenance and not availability, enterprise, I guess. Enterprise availability, how both those kind of work. So, I don't know, again, roughly these are, when they did this, our master plan before was in 2011, and so I had to I did the same, I get on the computer and I put a price in for 2011, say what does it cost right now? So, I'm using the generator just to kind of figure out. So some different things that we had, when we look at that interceptor one, we're looking at design was somewhere at 90,000, and we're looking at about $500,000 for the construction of it. And again, that could possibly be more. Nothing's cheap. Your engineering is always somewhere, between the 50 and the 100, and then your construction is going to be between 300,000 and 700. It just depends on the project and how much line and how much we have to dig into the ground. It's not cheap digging in the ground because we don't know what's there, and if we have to, change all the soil and bring in extra, so it's that's the hard part with that I've certainly learned with that. I kind of knew that being sitting up there with you guys. I ask the same questions, and so I'm trying to give you my best answer that I can.
So let Councilman Stokes know that a cell back in the day, a lagoon cell was 1.5, then it's 3 million, now it's what, 6?
We're looking at
$6 million.
A lagoon is, after engineering and putting in and do everything, we're looking, $6 million, $7 million. So
And what would a water treatment facility be?
32 million.
32.
So that's a cheap one.
That's a cheap one.
That's a cheap one. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what we're trying to do, Councilman Stokes, with this sewer master plan, is see if it's going to be another lagoon, or would it be for the better spank for our buck, just eat the 32 mil or 40 mil, you know what I mean?
I will be asking, excuse me, Mayor, Council, we'll be asking for more than a 5% if that happens. So, but those are things.
Correct, you guys get to make the decision on those bad boys. So,
Mayor.
Councilman McCain.
You were talking about having money and having the stewards' money and not using it. Have you ever had that problem
Mayor,
with
Council,
the increases that you've got?
have I had? No, we've been kind of, no, we're being able to spend it on projects that we need to get done.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And also try to keep a little bit of a cushion. We have to do the same thing with, I can give you a quick example with.
6 months reserves, right?
So we
Mr.
have to have $420,000 just sitting in for our DEQ loan for wastewater. So that's what we just have to have sitting there all the time.
Right.
So we don't get to use that. So.
Mayor?
Councilwoman Garvey?
So, maybe this is more for the record, it's pre my days of council, but I think that we should move some of that ARPA money that's sitting in fiber over to water and wastewater, unless it's all spent. We don't know though, because we don't get a lot of fiber updates. But, we're sitting here talking about an increase, and we've got $1.5 million sitting in fiber going. Water and wastewater is pretty important. So it's really hard to discuss an increase, I think, when we have that money.
We have.
We can move it over.
Sorry, Mr. We have we got 1.5, and it's for water, and then it's for fiber, so we can use it for. Hence, Mr. Urquides was going to use right now was 300 and some thousand from that line from ARPA. It's ready to be used for water.
Yeah, I'm not tracking you.
So Mayor, Council, so on that, so we had the two, and Tiffany has it right there too. So half of the 3 million was going to go to, so the 1.5 was going to go to water and the other part. So so we're not going to use all of the ARPA funds on this year. We're just going to use it to dig the hole. We'll use the rest of it when we start putting the transmission line and things in.
Right, I understand, Mayor.
Ms. Garvey.
What I'm saying is that all of that $1.5 million ARPA money, a couple months ago, all got moved to fiber.
Mr. Mayor, can I interrupt? So, I know this was pulled, but none of the ARPA money has been moved.
Okay.
It all
It's
sits
going
in
to
general
fiber.
fund.
Yes.
No. This is one transfer for fiber, which is equipment that was purchased, and I don't
No, I'm
know.
not thinking correctly. The money was going to fiber.
No. This is one piece, this is
I
the
understand
equipment that
that.
was purchased.
Yes.
This is the request to transfer that. This equipment is also being used currently is being used for a water project.
Sure, great. But what I'm saying is in a meeting a couple months ago, it was decided that that money was going to go towards fiber. All $1.5 million. Am I not correct, guys? Am I losing it here? Was I not at
I
this
thought it was
meeting?
a split, personally.
We have $3 million. 1.5 is going to water and wastewater, 1.5 is going to fiber. So why don't we move a little bit of that 1.5 out of fiber to go to water to help offset some of these costs? I mean, this is money that we got for free.
Mr. Mayor.
We have nothing to it.
We currently are using the ARPA funds for a water project. So this transfer is for the equipment, which was a stack truck, a trench machine,
For fiber.
and a small bore rig. It's considered a fiber asset, but we're currently using it for a water project. If we contracted that out, it would be a,
I understand what you're saying.
okay.
Yeah, I do. It's not my point, I understand.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Brennan?
I guess I'd like to keep going on that. So the bore machine, is that, Paul, is that the one you're talking about that's on this list that Tiffany
There's like
gave you?
3 things on there.
A bore machine of $150,000 for the fiber department is currently being utilized by water for some needs of theirs, but it is a fiber department asset. And we have taken possession of that already?
Yes.
Okay. What
That
else?
was councilwomen. This transfer, this equipment's already been purchased. If you look at your treasurer's report, it's negative. This is just stabilizing that fund. If you want to do a water project with the ARPA funds, you will see another transfer just like that. It'll come out of the general fund, which is where the money is currently being held, and it will go to whatever the final cost of that project is. This was the final cost of the purchase of the equipment. There's been no additional funding in fiber. It's all been water projects using the fiber equipment. Does that make sense? Sometimes I talk Paula and I'm really sorry for it.
Mayor?
Councilwoman Garvey?
All I am saying is that we have this money sitting here that could be well used in water or wastewater. We have loans out there, we could pay those off. We could, I don't know. So,
I agree with you, and I think that's where we all agreed on that we wanted to use the money in the account that we would not have normally because we were going to do the project anyways, but pay off old debt. Is that we were trying to? Yeah.
essentially.
Yes. And that was kind of quintessentially our plan was to pay off old debt, and then also do the water project with the ARPA funding.
But not all of it.
All
3 million of it.
correct.
Yeah. It's just hard when you say, excuse me, sorry, Mayor.
You're good.
It's just like the email I sent to you guys, you know. It's really hard, me looking at it, thinking the cost of stuff's going up and the, you know, pipes going up, chlorine's going up, all this stuff is going up, and we have this coffer of money sitting there that could help offset those costs. It could help offset your budget. It could help offset the well. So that's where I'm going with that money. So,
I mean, Mayor, Council, I mean, that, yes, and I mean, certainly could, and then that's your guys' prerogative. I mean, however, whatever funds that we get, we will use the best way that we can to make sure that we're using the money wisely.
Yeah.
So I think that you're right on that.
So, gentlemen and Madam Councilwoman, we're on action item number 8. What do you guys want to do? Do you not want to raise the rates? Do you want to leave it alone? Do you want to do, what was it, 4.2 or 4.3%? What was it, Rich?
It was less than 5, and I don't know whether it was like 4.8 or something like that. I'm not sure.
And then,
So it was raising it, Mayor Council, it was going from the base was going from 2570 to 2695, and then for every 5,000 after that, or every 1,000 after that, it was $5.40 to $5.65.
For wastewater.
That was wastewater, yes.
so are we having this, do you guys are just want to do the discussion for A, or do you want to have that discussion for B as well while we're here? Or do we have to do it A only, Paul? Since we're talking about A and B currently.
Do them both at the same time or piecemeal them, you're saying?
Yeah.
It's entirely up to you guys how you want to do it.
So what do you guys want to do?
I just assume combine them there.
Okay.
Yep.
So council members, what do you guys want to do with A and B?
Mayor?
Councilman Brennan.
Rich, have we run the numbers to see if we could leave the base rates alone and simply go the higher rates for the more gallons used?
I have,
The first tiers, or not the first, like the last two tiers?
we haven't because it was, Mayor, Council, we haven't because it was just over each of them. So, yeah, I'd have to see what it would be.
Mayor and Council, I don't think you could do that for wastewater. Because we calculate off of a base rate. We use the base rate of water, we use your water consumption in the winter and then base it off the base rate of wastewater. So I think if you altered the rates,
Does the rate equate to the quantity though? Yeah, it does.
5,000.
yeah, so I think you could do that on your water, but not your waste. So.
Go ahead, Paula.
Mayor and Council, we actually did that in the past. We're back to that point where we didn't change the base rate, and we actually moved it from 4,000 to 5,000 gallons, which is what put us in that pickle of where wastewater wasn't paying for itself. So just a little bit of history on that.
So would you, I guess councilman and councilwoman, would you rather, and I'm just throwing it out here, not do the water, but just do the wastewater? Would you rather just do water? I mean, regardless, they're all going to have consequences. I guess that's not a choice of word, but what do you guys want to do?
Mayor?
Councilman Brennan.
There's a big crowd here. I think it's just a safer decision to move forward with 5% regularly and not have the 30% increases. That's what scares me the most is it's hard for some people to find that 5% increase, but it's really hard for some people to find the 25 or 15% increases. So I'm going to trust in our subject matter expert here, and I think I'll be okay with it.
Is there a motion? Councilman Payne?
Just before he makes a motion, that is exactly why for the last 2 years, we took what their suggestion was because we had to make up for what the last councils hadn't done. And if we start doing it, then we're just going to get further and further behind, as you said. And I don't want to make it a 30% sometime down the line.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes.
This is a tough one. I just gotta say it's a tough one. I've been for the water increase the last 2 years. I really wanted to bump it that 20% that year. I knew we were in real trouble. But Councilman McCain makes some very good points, very valid points, where we don't want to be in that, let's jump at 25, 30, 35% even, and really screw ourselves, really.
So council members, what do you guys want to do?
Mayor,
Councilwoman Garvey.
I make a motion that we pass A and B. Do I have to say it anymore? Do I have to explain it out? Okay.
I'll second that.
So it's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion?
Mayor,
Councilman Garvey.
with the caveat that I think that when we have money, we need to put it to where water, wastewater, things like that, very important. I mean, water is vital to our community. So, I just want that said.
Roger that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Councilwoman Garvey.
Aye.
Councilman Brennan.
Aye.
Councilman McCain.
Aye.
Councilman Stokes.
Aye.
Alrighty. Run down to new business, items removed from the consent agenda, which was D and H. We'll start with D, approved budget transfers for general fund to economic development, golf course, fiber, and recreation. Councilman, who pulled D? I can't remember.
I did, Mayor.
Councilman Brennan, you want to take that one?
I'll find that paper again real quick. I guess my request is to break this down into separate votes. The transfer to economic development, the transfer to golf, the transfer to fiber, and the transfer to recreation, if the council so would allow.
Council members?
Mayor?
Councilwoman Garvey?
I'm good either way, it just because everything says council approved this request already. So these have all been approved by you guys. This is just the formality, right, Paula?
It's housekeeping.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just housekeeping.
So it doesn't bother me either way, there's my.
So when we get the audit,
Yeah.
so I don't just transfer
Right,
the funds.
right.
It's housekeeping, so you guys are aware of transferring funds.
Exactly, Mayor.
I'm sorry, Councilman McCain?
That this money's already been spent to where we can't go back and say, well, we don't want to get this now, to where, so, I don't see any reason to break it down, really. This is something that, as Paula said, is housekeeping. The bills are here, we have to pay them.
Councilman Stokes?
Mr. Mayor, I was going to ask Paula what would happen if we followed Councilman Brennan's advice here and one of them got voted no. Does that mess up the books for the audit? Is there
Sure,
consequences?
You're going
And what are they?
into a negative treasurer's report for fiber. Yeah, sure. It's gonna be noted in your audit. So, because you already approved it, you already purchased the equipment's being used. Yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be noted.
I just wanted to know that there was
Yes,
consequences.
It's gonna be noted.
There's
Note in the
consequences
audit.
to buying something and not paying for it.
Mayor?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think the best synopsis is going and buying the hammer,
And not
walking
paying-
out, not paying for it. I think that's what we were talking about. Councilman Brennan, sorry.
I agree there would be consequences, but I also think that there's other pots of money in our budget that could soak that up, although maybe uncomfortable that those bills could be paid or certain items could be returned, or not returned, I'm sorry, auctioned off for probably more money than we paid for them for.
All right, council members, what do you guys want to do?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to pay this as it's printed.
Second.
There's been a motion and a seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Councilman Stokes.
Mr. Mayor, as much as I agree with Councilman Brennan, I'm going to vote aye on this.
Councilman McCain.
Aye.
Councilwoman Garvey.
Aye.
Councilman Brennan.
Nay.
Okay. H, pass resolution that we pulled was number 522, approving the lease agreements with Bev Lucia for the farmers market at Railroad Park and authorizing the mayor to sign, and the city clerk, sorry. Authorizing the mayor and city clerk to sign.
Mayor,
Councilman McCain?
and this is the one I had pulled.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'm really wanting a 5-year lease on a city park from May to October, and I see no insurance in here or anything. We've had one special event that had insurance and everything for one day. And it was only for a year, to where 5 years just makes me nervous on a park that belongs to everybody.
Watch that. Do we have any other 5-year, I think, wasn't that the request, because there's other parks that have a 5-year contract, or no? Did we do that with the Daniel Dobbs or the dirt track, Mountain Home Speedway? Did we do any of those with 5 years?
That's correct, Mayor. Daniel Dobbs has a 5-year that was signed last year, and the Speedway, I think, is in year 2. It's 5 years. Motocross is a 1 year. That's done annually. He would probably do a 5 year. And then trying to think of the other ones out there. This one.
Mayor.
Councilman McCain?
There's a couple of those I could understand. The dirt track, not everybody's gonna go out there. A park is completely different than a dirt track or a rodeo arena, to where, that I still think just as a 5 year on those would be fine. 5 year on a park, I just think is too much without ever having done something like that before.
Okay. So we're the
Mayor.
Councilman Brennan?
I would agree with Councilman McCain that there are very specific uses for those other items that were mentioned, like a motocross track. Although one could maybe find an additional use for a motocross track other than motocross, but that's kind of a single use facility, so to speak. And our main downtown city park is definitely has the option to have all sorts of different kind of events there. With I don't know if we technically call it a park or not, but the hub park, the hub plaza, I don't think, I can't speak for the council, but I wouldn't be interested in letting one group have full and complete access to that for an entire spring, summer, and fall. So yeah, I think the I forget the name of it that we already have in place. Basically a daily special use permit for the park would be more appropriate.
Mayor?
Councilwoman Garvey?
I'm with them on the 5 year. I think it's too long, but I do agree with, a lease in general, but also, do we require insurance from her? So, because it's just not in this lease.
Yeah, not always do they provide the insurance prior to this. Like, she could go pull that right before her event
Could
starts.
we have that added to the lease, though, that they have to provide insurance?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, I just think
All
that
the
that's
others
like a
have-
small technicality there.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, it was originally, I wrote this several years ago for different rental, and it was, at the time I had an insurance thing in there, and it was stricken out because the cost of insurance was too burdensome for the nonprofit. And so that's why it was taken out. But I agree it should be in there. And then the only other comment I would have is that 5 year leases binds future city councils, which is we generally don't like to do that. We will sometimes do that, though, when the lessee is expending significant resources in order to improve it.
Mm-hmm.
And so in order to get the return on their investment, they'll do that. I don't see how a farmer's market is doing that. But in those other uses that you guys mentioned, there might be significant improvement that they're pouring into it, and therefore they needed it to be a longer lease. And that's usually when we do those longer leases. So what I see here is taking a lease for a different purpose and repurposing it for something like this, and it may end with all the things that you guys are identifying. I noticed that too. I also noticed there is a typo, which probably is my fault.
Probably.
Scrivener's error.
Yeah. On the bottom of page 5 where it says termination, just this is for tip if she changes it, is if the tenant is engaging in something that endangers the public health and safety or engaging in discriminatory practices, it's the city that reserves the right to terminate the agreement, not them.
Not the
Yeah.
Hey, Paul.
You spotted it? There you go.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes?
Paul, you said something interesting there. You used the term nonprofit, which I'm not sure the Mountain Home Farmers Market is actually a 501c3 or C6 or whatever they are. The other thing I have is we all love the market. I like the market. The one caveat that I would like to see in the lease is that they absorb the pop-up flea market. And I say that because we have a city ordinance that says there's no selling in Railroad Park. And then I also think that by having that pop-up one, we're at some sort of liability as a city if something were to occur. Does that make sense?
No.
Yeah.
Pop up? What?
It's on the, where we just put the big rock and then the pavilion on that side.
Yeah.
As much as I visited the flea market before too, though it's illegal according to our ordinances, so.
You're gonna say something, Paul.
I'm not gonna say anything. I was thinking of a really bad pun, but I decided to hold it in.
Okay. So Tiff, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I have, Mayor, I just have some clarification. There's been comment of, you feel, I think Councilman McCain and Councilman Brennan mentioned a special event application rather than the lease. Councilman McGarvey liked the lease. Councilman Stokes, I don't quite know where you're at. You're with flea market and that. What direction bring this back, or she needs to do a special event application for her 2022 season? Could I get that clarification?
So council members, what would you like to do?
Because this special
You want to go
event
one by
is-
one?
Yeah, I'll go down here.
All right.
Councilman Stokes, what do you want?
1 year lease. They have to absorb the flea market, and they have to get insurance.
Councilman McCain?
I've got a question for Councilman Brennan. Councilman Stokes. Why should she absorb the flea market that is just gonna show up down there? She has no control over that, especially.
She doesn't. Now,
To where I just say a 1 year lease is fine with me, or the special, either one, it doesn't matter to me. I'm just not up for the 5 years is
Yeah.
what my main thing.
my thought process, sorry, Mayor.
You're good.
My thought process is that within the lease, they only own this one thing. If we can include that other piece, that would mean she has control of both of those pieces of property and can absorb them.
And hang on a second, Councilman Stokes. Remind me, Tiffany, you spoke to her. She wants to go down to where the caboose
She
now.
wants to go to the caboose side and where the current market is, so the two narrower pieces. She does not want the larger part, the larger grass area. She does not want to be in charge of that. And I do not know how she would control the people that appear there to sell their items.
She wanted the non-Idaho made products to go by the caboose, right? And then the Idaho made products to go in the current farmer's market. Sorry,
Gotcha.
Councilman. So
Gotcha.
go ahead.
That's,
Mayor,
And they may not agree with me, so.
Councilman McCain.
we have that flea market that is just down there that has started itself, and I think if we try to start controlling it under somebody, it's gonna die out, and I just don't want that to happen, because that is something that has just, that's something that I know I like, the citizens like, to go down and look around, but if it goes away, then it's not gonna be there for anybody, to where I don't think she needs to control that. I think we just need to leave that unregulated right now for what we have for the parks until, or if something should happen where we have to. I don't wanna get involved in it until then.
Councilman Brennan.
Where do I start? We're just talking about the farmer's market, not the flea markets. So, that's how I'll just distinguish them.
Okay.
But if we have a city ordinance that says thou shalt not, then thou shalt not, right? Unless they have a permit or a whatever you call it, a permit or a lease, right? So that, I think that lease would trump the ordinance, maybe, Paul?
Leases do not trump ordinances.
They don't. So, under our current ordinance, can the Mountain Home Farmers Market do their thing in Railroad Park?
I have no idea. I don't know the ordinance that well. Just rattle off what it says.
Do you have it, Councilman Stokes?
I think it's the flea market
Keep
that's
talking.
in violation. Correct? That's what you're saying? It's the flea market side that's selling used goods on city property.
Well, I don't know how the ordinance reads. I know I've seen it before.
I remember seeing it.
But if it says you can't sell anything in the park, then both would be in violation.
Okay, let me run it back.
The way it generally is worded is unless otherwise provided for, thou shalt not sell in the park, is the way usually these things are written, which addresses special events, permits, and licenses, and leases, and stuff like that. So there's a general rule, but then there's usually a catchphrase that will give us discretion in that regard. That's usually the way they're written. What number is it?
I'm trying to find it here. I might be in the wrong chapter.
So,
Let me go on for a second.
Councilwoman Garvey, thoughts?
My thoughts are, first, You know, I think the farmer's market is fantastic for Mountain Home, and if she wants to take it on for the citizens, I think it's great. So I don't think we need to put too many parameters on it. My question is, what is the difference? I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it, right? What is the difference between a special use permit and a lease? Is it one time versus?
So if you do, Mayor,
Go ahead,
If
Ms.
you-
Bell.
if you do a special event application, she would pay the park rental fee for every weekend she wants it, and she'd have to submit it. Most of the time, you take like the additional market that ran last year, separate than this one. She filled out her application one time stating all her dates,
Okay.
and she would coordinate it through the Parks and Recreation office. Miss Lucia, she just has to do this one lease. She takes it on for the year. She pays the formula that's attached here, which is calculated based off of park rental and average use of what she has for the year, and that's what she would pay. That's the difference between them.
Yeah, I don't think that the pop-up flea market on the other side, it's no different than them going to Carl Miller Park and saying we're gonna have a big yard sale. And it is good for our people. It's good for our town. Digging through and finding little treasures. But that's my only thoughts is the insurance and the 5 years. It's too long.
So it's 1 year, just do it annually?
1 year.
Mayor.
Councilman Brennan?
So you mentioned the other group in the hub. Is that what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Are they paying a special event permit fee?
They pay they pay the park rental fee every time they have their event.
How much does that cost?
If she books it for half the day, it's, I think, $15, and if she books it for all day, it's $30. Don't hold me to those fees because I'm no longer in recreation, so.
See, that's why they need to be here. Darcy, where'd you go?
So it's substantially cheaper to give somebody long-term access to the public facilities.
So it's $25 for half day.
$25 for a half day. Yeah, substantially cheaper for a lease rather than a special use permit.
Well, the lease is based off of that formula that we agreed on last year to
Right.
make it fair for everybody. So we took what is the calendar year by the base formula. So you all have that, right? So I don't have to just swing it off. And then by the amount of time this leasing would be within the park is how that formula is based.
So, okay, I get how we created the formula. Thank you for reminding me. But as far as like the other one, right? Are we as a city willing to lease out the hub all summer long?
That's gonna be my question.
I don't think we're treating people equally
Well,
here.
I agree with you. The lease for the hub is going to come to you and you can make that decision. At this time, that market has yet to come to city staff with event forms to do that. So,
Mayor?
Councilwoman Garvey?
So, let me make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So, we allow our parks to be rented out all summer, potentially. Is that what I'm hearing? So if somebody wanted to come and rent out Carl Miller Park, obviously there's a lot of special events, so those are blocked out?
Mhm.
Okay, so the hub's no different, so then they could rent it out as well, right?
Yeah,
That's
we-
what I'm understanding?
we've actually, again, I'm not in the Parks and Rec department any longer, but at that time we were trying not to allow people to come in and just reserve the hub because the idea was for it to be a community gathering place. So it wasn't, Councilman Brennan couldn't come and just reserve it for his everyday birthday party. You couldn't gobble up all those spaces. I'm using it as an example. But it was open for community event gatherings because that's how we felt at that time. It was developed and created for. It could be open now for reservation, I'm not quite sure. We inherited that property right when COVID took over. So then it was like, where are we going? What's the direction? How are we moving? And I think now people are starting to want to use it more. So recreation and parks could be coming to you on what you guys see as that development, right? So, but nobody's wanted to lease it yet.
Okay.
So council members, what do you guys want to do? So I'm hearing 1 year insurance. Everything's copacetic.
Did we find that ordinance, man?
Oh, did you find the ordinance there?
Paul, did you
Council
find it 346G? Is that right?
3 for what?
6G?
Alright, I'm on 343.
I did, but I lost interest. Basically says you can't sell commercially unless you have a special event permit. Basically what it
So there's
says.
the unless, so there's the catch-all in this.
Special event permit.
So what we're saying is the pop-up market or flea market, that's the one they need to come in and if you want to sell there, you need to come in and take that area over and do your special event
And get insurance.
and get insurance.
So what we're gonna do, Mayor,
Councilman McCain?
so what we're gonna do with the regular flea market, that people just go down there, we're just gonna shut them down then, is what you're saying? Otherwise, everybody has to come in and get a special events permit to go down there.
Let me make this crystal clear. I am not shutting
Well,
down
I mean,
anybody. Maybe the police department might, but not me.
That's what we're saying our ordinance says.
Correct.
To where, and I think we need to change that ordinance.
I agree. I think that, like you said, you can go down and buy treasures and find cool things. It gives people, if they needed to sell some stuff, it gives them some capital. I think it's cool. Go ahead, Mr. Yerkiti.
Mayor, Council, and I think the Chief is right, that's, we're talking enforcement, and really, the only time that ever happens is a Saturday. Anytime, anytime, it's kind of up to you, if we say, hey, Saturday's fine, we're not going, tell the police department they're not gonna enforce it on that day, but any other day, they gotta ask them about it, I don't know, I'm just saying, but that's the only time I ever see anybody that's setting something up, is it's Saturday, it's that time, so.
Mr. Mayor.
So, good.
And be careful about, a special events permit should not be an overly burdensome thing to get.
Right.
But the reason why it says the way it says it there is that if you have people that are in the park and they're doing a con job, or people are getting stolen, or people, worse, are leaving trash everywhere, and now your garbage cans are over full and the park looks like crap and all that stuff. Who was it? And so if they have a special event permit, there's somebody there that you can talk to and say, hey, you don't get to do this next week. And then if you're there illegally because you don't have the permit or whatever, code enforcement now has some basis to say, move along. You can't con our citizenry, or you can't make a mess and stuff like that. Or there, when it's, depending on what it is, it could be safety issues, with a hot fryer or something like that. There's just things that you want to have in place, which is why you have a permitting process, just to know who's in your park and what they're doing.
Okay.
Mayor.
Councilman McCain.
That, trying to control that is just like when I was in the back trying to control garage sales. You can't, because the ordinance says you can only have 3 garage sales a year. And I know many that they open their garages up every weekend, to where I just think that we're opening up a can for people just to shut down coming down there.
I don't think we have staff.
We should not be regulating what people do in their own houses and in their own.
I know. I'm just saying, that's what the ordinance says. I agree. We never pushed it.
Oh, you sold a pair of shoes last week. You're done.
No more shoes for you.
I couldn't see it, and we never pushed it. I just have fun.
Tiff, go ahead, real
I
quick.
don't know if I want to keep talking about it. We've had, this discussion has happened with city staff, and I could tell you, Brock and I and Miguel and Darcy, we've had some really good heart-to-hearts. And we've considered, hey, maybe there should be a sign-up sheet through Recreation if you want to sell at the market. Call, get your name, your contact. We do have a trash problem. We have where they're stringing things on trees and poles, and so, yeah, but I don't know if we've come up with a good solution, and maybe that's something in work group we can solve. But I just know that this item definitely has been something talked about with the flea market, and trying to just find a simple solution so that it's accomplished by citizens and they can still enjoy it.
Mayor.
Councilman McCain.
I'd like to go ahead and continue with this one. Not the pop-up flea market. That's not on the agenda here right now. This resolution is. Let's continue with it.
Mayor? Councilman Brendan? Wait, really quick. With the 1 year?
Yes.
Not the 5?
No.
Okay, sorry.
With the 1 year.
Insurance.
And insurance, yes.
Okay, Councilman Brennan.
I'd like to allow them to to continue under the special event permit as our ordinance currently states.
So is that a motion? Councilman McCain, I'm sorry.
No, I was just,
Okay.
I thought we hadn't finished out here, that's why the only thing I was, that,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Brennan?
With it not in writing, I'm not sure what the rules are, but ultimately, I'm gonna make a motion to deny this 5-year lease that's in front of us. Can we change it without the applicant saying what they're willing to do or not willing to do?
Well, she.
Paul?
Conditional.
Yeah.
Conditional approval, provided the applicant agrees to a 1-year lease, the whole interlineation thing. So long as the applicant agrees to a 1-year lease and will provide insurance of minimum $500,000, blah, 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 the standard spiel.
Okay.
And so it's conditional. So if those conditions are not agreed to, then it's a deny.
Okay. Can I amend my motion?
Go ahead.
I make a motion to allow the farmer's market to continue on the special events permit daily with the ability to schedule it out for the season.
second.
All right, it's been motioned and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Councilwoman Garvey?
Nay.
Was it?
Councilman
Was there a second?
Stokes?
Yes, I second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Councilman Stokes?
Nay.
Councilman McCain?
Aye.
Councilman Brennan?
Aye.
Go ahead, Tiff, really quick.
I'm sorry, but is it this lease or is it a special event?
Special event.
He wants to do special
Okay,
event.
all right. Okay, just want to make sure I understood that right. Okay.
That's what our ordinance says.
Yeah, that's why I changed it. If our ordinance says special event, then we need to go by it.
So I vote aye.
Okay.
Okay. Action item number 2, deliberation decision. We're going down to new business. Action item request by applicant Loves for a waiver of building permit fees per City of Mountain Home City Code 1-13 Economic Development Incentive Program. Brock.
Alrighty.
Garvey. Did you say my name or no?
No.
Okay.
Well, I just wanted clarification, but I understand.
Yeah,
I changed mine when I went because of the special events. It said
Yeah.
special events, so that's why I went ahead and seconded the special
Yeah,
event.
okay, yeah, I wasn't tracking, so anyway.
No, I jumped there.
Yell at me. I got bad ears.
Well, I jumped things there around to where I probably screwed everybody up.
Recommendation to City Council, if you ever have questions about the special event ordinance, I drafted it.
So now
That's why now we know what the problem is. Fixed.
Can we revote? I'm just kidding.
Alrighty, so while the applicant is setting up,
With the lights yet?
not yet.
Okay, just tell me.
So this is our first Economic Development Division application. The city ordinance has a section for economic development incentives, which was approved in 2018, I believe during Courtney's time here, to try to incentivize new business to come to Mountain Home. What I have before you is a request to utilize that ordinance in providing a waiver to the applicant who is Loves. So a little bit about the ordinance. The ordinance is fairly simple. Essentially, and this is good for the public to know as well, if you're creating more than 3 jobs, you can potentially fall under this ordinance. So I don't want people to think this is necessarily only for bigger businesses, but it's applicable to smaller businesses as well. The things that can be waived are building permit fees and zoning fees. Nothing else. Not hookup fees, not impact fees, not water rights fees, building permit fees, and zoning fees. The other item that can be asked for by the applicant is to expedite their application process. They're already involved within the application process. That is not being asked for this time. What is being asked is a waiver of building permit fees. So what the applicant is proposing, so everyone knows where we're at, just south of the Hampton Hotel, north of the interstate, is 46 acres, known as the Wilson property. They would like to build a project that would be in 2 phases. The first phase is what is being asked for today. The applicant isn't asking for the second phase.
The first phase would be a Type A industrial facility, which would be used as a distribution center and minor manufacturing modifications to tires. The building is estimated to be $12.5 million, and at full operation will employ approximately 65 people. I got with Hank, and I have documents that we received from the applicant to try to determine what the projected building permit would actually end up being. And the number that we came up with was $118,851.92. I'm rounding it up to $120,000 just for the sake of conversation. Now, our code also says another important thing. Another waiver that is possible for businesses, which isn't as easy as our waiver, it's through the Elmore County, which is a waiver of property taxes. Our ordinance says that typically, if we're giving one, we shouldn't give the other. However, if the city council finds that the economic impact is so great, they may proceed as so. The applicant has requested to the county a partial waiver of their property taxes, which will be heard on the 18th. Ideally, I kind of wish that would have happened before, because then we would have known exactly where we stand. But just to give you an idea, what they are asking from the county over a 5-year period of time is for the first year, a 100% tax waiver. The second year would be a 75% tax waiver. The third year, 50%. Year 4, 35%. And then year 5, 15%. The reason for the sliding mechanism is because when we discussed with the applicant the types of waivers that would be available, we found that sometimes when we want just everything, we won't have anything to really support what is happening. And right now we're talking about growth, development, paying for development, and it's one of those things we need to be cautious about. So I got with the county assessor, and I want to thank Elmore County for being excellent partners. I got with Josh Dyson, and he looked at the plans provided by the applicant, and it was determined that this project is projected to be assessed at $12.5 million or $15 million roughly. If they get what they are asking from the Elmore County Commissioners, over a 5-year period, the city, not Elmore County, the city, our portion of taxes that we will not be collecting and what will be waived is between $268,000 and $322,000. If we add the building permit fee to that, if we were to approve what is being asked for by the applicant, it would be $388,000 and $442,000, so just south of $500,000. The applicant is going to give a presentation. What you need to look at during this presentation is the ongoing revenue benefit to the city from property taxes and other fees, the number and quality of jobs created, including their benefits, whether they are part-time, the longevity of their employees, the overall public benefit to the city in terms of a new or enhanced commercial service, the ability of the project to spur more economic development in that area, and the impact of the proposed development on existing city infrastructure. I want to note that this site is unique in that the transportation is probably less than optimal. The applicant has been working hand in hand with the Idaho Transportation Department. What they are intending for that first phase is going to service big semi-trucks. The second phase would be a travel center, which would also be approximately $12.5 million, employ roughly the same amount of people. You can imagine that there's going to be a few cars. I believe that when ITD goes through their process and they go through a right-of-way permit and the applicant has provided a traffic impact study for what they have, that they could be looking at substantial transportation infrastructure projects, which could easily be around $500,000 to $1 million. I can tell with you, I've spoken with other businesses in that area. Some want to expand, but they also need enhanced transportation infrastructure, which potentially, if this project was to provide that, could spur additional economic development. So I've given you a lot to think about. I'm going to let the applicant present, and then we will close for any questions you may have.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes.
Can I ask Mr. Cherry one question?
Absolutely.
I noticed on this thing, the EDUs, one EDU, I know it's probably Hank's department and he left smartly probably.
Just one bathroom.
Okay. I was just
The one
curious.
just automatically pops up.
Okay.
I know, I can answer that question for
Okay.
you.
And then Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Councilman
may I move so I can look at this?
Stokes. Councilman McCain?
So the only thing we're looking at is the building permit fee, the third-party plan review. We're not asking for any of that then, okay?
That is separate. As you know, Councilman McCain, that's a third-party servicer.
That's what I
and
wanted to
the
make sure we
applicant
weren't
would have
giving
to
away
pay for
that.
service.
Yes, okay.
Correct.
And then both of these will be up here at the property up on the hill.
Yes, sir.
Both
But
of them,
I
the
just want it to be
200,000
very
square-
clear,
okay.
what is only being asked for
Right,
at this moment is the industrial portion.
right. Okay, thank you.
All right, so go ahead, Cody.
Mayor, Council, thanks for having us. Thanks for having me. Brock, thanks for introducing the project. It's important to note that the client, ourselves, have felt very welcomed for the City of Mountain Home, from both Brock and the mayor. We have traveled from Salt Lake all the way up to Boise. We've looked at dozens and dozens of sites and have honed in on one particular site due to the welcomeness of Mountain Home and the labor force that it will provide, and just how much benefit we believe that each other will provide. Quick introduction on myself. I'm Cody Garrison with Ambrose Property Group. On the development side, we are a private developer out of Indianapolis, Indiana. Founded in 2008. We did approximately $1 billion last year in development, and we're trending well above that for 2022. We focus heavily on industrial and e-commerce facilities like this, ranging from as small as 100,000 feet to pushing 4 million feet. So we like to think we have experience in these types of facilities. We also have experience working in all different types of sites. This site, just a brownfield site, is wonderful, but we look at demo projects and we look at a host of sites, and this one really focused in is the best one for us. As Brock mentioned, Love's is the proposed tenant or user of this facility. Love's is a family-owned company to this day. I'm sure many of you guys have heard of them and even stopped at their travel centers. They're a very respectable company and very family-oriented, even as they have grown. They were founded in 1964, still ran by Love's brothers today as co-CEOs. So the Love's name is still there and is doing its part to promote from within and keep the business family-oriented. They at this time have approximately 550 travel stops. They're growing every single day. So that number, I could say today, it's outdated tomorrow, and so on and so forth. They have 32,000 plus employees right now. Those are primarily travel stop employees, although it's important to note that they do have a handful of distribution centers and are growing that network. I've personally done 2 of them for them, one of them in Oklahoma, one of them in Indiana. Very, very similar to this project, so if there's any specific question on the facility, what it looks like, what it does, how it operates, hopefully I'll be able to answer that for you. So to get into the proposal details, we put a site plan up here. Hopefully you guys can see it. What Brock mentioned is phase 1 is what's going to be on the south piece. That's a distribution center that's approximately 200,000 square feet. It will have approximately 5,000 feet of office in it. It will employ approximately 65 employees that range from warehouse associates, light manufacturing or retread associates. There will be truck drivers that will haul the finished product to their facilities throughout the western piece of the country. And then there's obviously there's manager folks as well as general manager who will run the facility. It will be approximately $12.5 million at this time. We would propose a 2022 construction start. We build these buildings generally in less than a year, sometimes quicker, sometimes as quick as 9 months, depending on commodity availability, which would give us a 2023 substantial completion. And they do begin operations just as quickly as they possibly can. It's also important to note that the north piece or the travel center piece would be built in phase 2. That does take a little bit longer to get through approvals on the internal side, the Love side, if you will. That facility would be very similar to what you see up and down 84. It would also be approximately $12.5 million. It would service both cars and long-haul truckers. And it would potentially begin construction in 23 with a completion date into 24. It would employ approximately 50 full-time associates. As Brock mentioned, we are also working with the IDT. We have a traffic study into them as we speak. There are a host of different improvements that are noted, so I can't speak on what's going to be decided as it's fairly new. But there are a host of improvements along Highway 20 and foothills to help control the traffic that will be increased once the travel center itself is completed. So I just wanted to show a few industrial development examples. These are the two buildings I mentioned earlier. I will kind of lay out how these work. Both of these were the projects that I happened to do for Love's. Like I said, 5,000 square feet of office. It's what you expect to see in an office. It'll have offices, conference rooms, break rooms, and then restrooms. It will be the balance of warehouse, and of that warehouse, I would tell you 60 to 70% will be actual racking, so they'll store their product, which happens to be tires. And then the other 30 to 40% will be a retread manufacturing process, which is where they find and basically reuse, recycle good semi-tires that have structural strength in them still. They test them, they put new tread on them to provide a new life. They also test them again after they're complete, and then they're able to store them and distribute them to Speedco facilities that you see sitting alongside their travel centers throughout the country. Not every travel center has them, but this is a very growing business. It works well for them. It provides the truck drivers with a low-cost alternative while they still get virtually the same use out of the tires. I do have a video of the facility if anybody wants to see it. I can show it now or later. It's up to you guys. Does anybody have interest?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. You won't be able to hear it, so I'll have to give some.
Love's Truck Solutions is focused on changing the mindset about retreads and their reliability. You can rely on our process, our extensive network, and the fact that we offer a lifetime warranty. We've made the investment to make the best quality retread on the market. We don't want to make a good tire, we want to make the very best tire. Our quality control process is unlike any other in the industry, and Love's retreads are the most inspected tire on the market. Our rigorous 5-step inspection process employs the latest innovative technology, coupled with well-trained and certified technicians to ensure that our retreads will perform for every customer. Love's Retread program enables you to have availability to a quality, dependable retread product at any of our locations across the country, or by delivery to your terminal. You can always count on Love's Retreads to be available wherever you need it. With the most comprehensive warranty, a segmented quality control process, and a nationwide distribution network, let our innovative retread program be the solution for your fleet. Learn more by contacting your Love's Fleet representative.
So jump back more now that you've kind of seen what the process looks like. It's super important to note that the actual process itself is extremely clean. One may not think that retreading tires is clean, but all that happens is the old tread is essentially ground off and is contained in a vacuum system and then disposed of into an enclosed trailer that's hauled off and recycled as needed. It is not a water user. It's not a heavy water user. It uses water for just the restrooms for the approximately 65 associates. And it's, like I said, so there's no water that feeds the actual production process itself, which is important to a host of folks. Also important to note that when we build these buildings throughout the country, for Love's and really for all of our clients, it's important to us to use local. So we look for local general contractors. We look for local subcontractors. They generally provide the best prices, the best quality, and it provides an impact, not just the jobs that end up here at the end, but $12.5 million of wages and such paid into community members throughout. So it is important to us, and we do look for that and continue to have success with it. It's not just something that we want to get; it's something that does end up generally happening. So to jump into the actual jobs benefit request piece. As I mentioned, it's approximately 65 jobs. They have a minimum starting wage of $17. It only goes up from there. It's important to note that Loves to promote from within. They find their best quality workers, rise up through the ranks, if you will. A lot of their general managers will start as a GM of a facility like this, making an excellent wage. Will start as a retread associate that makes $17, $18 as that continues to go up. That's super important to Love's as a company, but I think it's good for a company as a whole. And then they have good benefits overall from healthcare and time off and those types of things. So the request, as Brock mentioned in his preview, is a waiver of the building permit fees to help get this facility off the ground and producing revenue for the community.
All right.
Let's jump into questions.
Mayor?
Council, really quick, go ahead.
I reached out to some other partners as well. I found out that the city has tons of resources when we're making these sorts of decisions. And I reached out to the Idaho Department of Labor and asked them, how do we measure economic impact? And how can we answer some of these questions that we have in our ordinance of really what is it? And what was projected with a retread facility in our area, that in the first year alone, it would create between about 324 jobs. And there would be $9.2 million of revenue through that construction. Now, do I think we're going to catch all of it? Probably not. We have a lot of people who are here to do the work. Loves wants to use local people, and I trust them that they will do that. But if we can keep a hefty amount of that here, I think that would be a win. The ongoing operations from this facility operating, not including its employees, but the need that it will create in our community for more healthcare workers, more retail, the entire gambit of what it takes to sustain a workforce that they are choosing to provide would be approximately $9.3 million annually, and have a job creation projection of 171 per year. Now, I want to tell you, these are projections. Take them with a grain of salt. But what I have for you is the best information that I am able to provide based on the information that we have. This is a Type A facility, a industrial facility very similar to Marathon. We haven't had a Marathon in a little while. These facilities are the creme de la creme. They keep everything inside when it comes to fumes, when it comes to noise. They're excellent partners. And with Mountain Home, for our economic users, we're trying to find Cinderella, and finding a low water industrial user is easier said than done. So when we got the request from Ambrose to look at Mountain Home, and they said they don't use water, I grabbed them with both hands. So I think what I have before you is a quality employer. I've given you the data, and once again, any questions you have for me, I'm certainly here to answer. This is my first time doing this type of item. I believe it might be most of your first time as well, but I'm confident that if I can't answer something today, or if Ambrose can't answer something today, that they can give you the information so you can make the best decision possible.
I'm just going to say I love the $9 million.
Yeah, you got that too.
$1 million. Council members, Councilman Stokes.
Cody, you hit on some important things there. Water, employee relations and promotion, healthcare. The thing that I caught while I was watching there was all of your projects were 100% completed on time and under budget. That's pretty important because I think we want to move here on this. And Brock's correct, you can't find a unicorn all the time. That this seems like one to me. The one big question is going to be, I think, the access and the city streets for this property, so keep that in mind. Okay.
Yeah, on the access piece, I did mention we have an ITD traffic study that's in ITD's hands at this time. It addresses, I mean, to be very truthful, the access is important to Love's, right? They need that access off of both 20 and Foothills for both semis and four-wheel traffic. And so they're, like I said, the decision hasn't been made at this time, but there absolutely will be improvements made to get the traffic in there as it needs to be.
Those were my only questions, Mayor.
Okay, Councilman McCain.
When I was back there at the building department, which I keep bringing up, but it's relevant at times, that we had waived building permit fees several times. I believe Marathon was one of them, and I think they worked out very well for us. And ITD is gonna make sure that the overpass and 20 gets everything they need, before they're gonna let them even start, to where I think this with a low water user is definitely something that Mountain Home uses, 65 jobs to start off with, and more to go up to where, I think that's a good idea.
Councilman Brennan?
Cody, thanks for the presentation. I am excited about this. Kind of going off of what Councilman Stokes said, is transportation up there is a disaster right now. I get to work it in my daily grind. But Foothills Road, without any kind of like major overhaul, honestly does not seem like an option for any kind of exiting traffic, leaving the facility. And I haven't physically had eyes on, but I've heard and got the verbal details of ITD's plan that they once presented to the city of Mountain Home for that greater area. And so with Foothills Road, maybe your passenger cars can enter in, but trying to get the semi trucks out of there, I mean, you can't get a truck with a pickup camper out of there on any type of summer day, a camping season and stuff. It's a disaster. So in my mind, I support the building permit waiver, but I would probably caveat that and say that the transportation plan access would be on Love's pocketbook. So like we give away as much as we can, but I can see a map here with the mayor, but it seems like the best approach, and maybe not for Love's, but for our community, is to go straight north to Hawk Creek Road and exit out that way. And based on what ITD has told the city in the past, I would imagine that that's going to be their recommendation. Have you or Love's considered the cost burden of putting in that north-south road to connect to Hawk Creek and out to US Highway 20?
No, we have not. ITD has not recommended that to us, ironically. The improvements at Foothills and 20, there's really two main improvements that are outlined in the report. It's either a stoplight or a roundabout. Those are their two suggestions. They had a handful of options that our traffic engineer looked at, and like I said, they haven't decided yet, but those are the two options that they presented for Foothills and 20.
Okay. Like Councilman McCain said, I trust what ITD is going to do. They put a lot of restrictions oftentimes on our highway system here. All of our main roads in town here are state highways, and so we're kind of handcuffed by them a lot. But they make good decisions ultimately in terms of large vehicle entrances and exits. They already closed down a small entrance to the pilot. I don't know if you noticed that on any kind of a site visit.
Yeah.
Just trying to reduce the amount of ins and outs within like a 100-foot radius there. So
yeah, we have to have support of ITD to push this thing as well.
Absolutely. I think it's a great project. I'd love to see it happen. That the roads will be a good thing. The improvement. What I was going to finish by saying on that is, I think any kind of investment that you put in there, I forget the term, Brock, but it's basically a cost-sharing thing. So you might have the 100% burden to pay for that now. Any additional user that comes along the line pays you back, essentially.
Yeah.
So
ITD hasn't.
So we do have an ordinance within our code which does allow for that. And as I mentioned before, I've had properties up there that want to expand, but they have much of the same issues. So there could be some potential for them to remediate some of those costs. But I look at the foot point that says, does it spur economic development? And I think the needed transportation infrastructure improvements would certainly do that. Are they going to be pricey? Yes, very much so. And I think they're aware. I think it could be anywhere between $500,000 to $1 million in transportation infrastructure improvements alone. So that's something I would take into consideration as we look at the overall amount that the city is willing to subsidize in order to help economic development happen.
Council members, Councilman McCain?
If I'm not mistaken, we talked with ITD last year, the year before that, because we were talking about stoplights, and they were saying 18th or 8th, and on any other side, lights were not going to work, that they were going to have to use roundabouts, because there's no way you could get the stopping distances you needed between each of those lights, to where I just imagine we're gonna have roundabouts there.
Correct.
A
It
very-
was in, it's a federal highway and it's too close to the off-ramp and on-ramp, so it's the IDAPA rules.
Right.
So the only thing that works with that in 2040 for the SPUI was a traffic circle.
Right.
You're right, you're correct. Okay. Council members, what do you guys want to do?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes.
Moving forward, I will probably make a motion here, but I'm going to ask Brock a quick question. Brock, with this request, would you want, I guess, $118,851.92 waived, or up to like $120,000 building permit
I
waived?
would suggest the latter, Councilman.
All right, Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes.
I'd like to make a motion, if I can find my thing, to accept the request by the applicant Loves for a waiver of building permit fees per Mountain Home City Code 1-13 Economic Development Incentive Program for up to a waiver of $120,000 in building permit fees.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? The only discussion is thank you, Councilman and Councilwoman. Brock and I, we sit with these developers and great companies like this that show interest in Mountain Home. So it's good to know that you guys are you're pro-development. So with that, I'll call for the question. Councilman Stokes?
Aye.
Councilwoman Garvey?
Aye.
Councilman McCain?
Aye.
Councilman Brennan?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
What?
Oh, late
Late comes the agreement. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. None, Brock.
So, just so the council is aware, the next stage of this is when I get with Paul and we get a draft a resolution of what everything looks like. So, be looking for that in your council packet. And again, if you have any questions, let me know.
Thanks, Brock.
Thank you.
All right, action item number 3, deliberation decision on a request submitted by Tracy Lefevre for reconsideration of city council decision made on December 13th, 2021, approving the request for Runway Capital LLC for annexation, zoning change, and planned unit development of parcel number RP03S06E 340745 and RP03S06E 340740.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes.
Since this is new to the entire council, can we have legal guide us through this process?
Certainly. A motion for reconsideration for a land use application is brought pursuant to the Local Land Use Planning Act, which is Title 67, Chapter 65. Specifically, it's 676535 2B, which enables only the applicant or an affected person to petition the city council to reconsider a land use decision. There's timelines that have to be maintained. Ms. Lefevre has done that. She submitted it early, in fact. And so then she submitted her request in writing. If she wishes to present further to the city council, she can, if she wants to. The applicant, I don't even know if they're here or not, they have the right to substantively respond to that as well. And then generally, the city council will take that under advisement, and they must issue a decision within 60 days from the date that the request for reconsideration is done. Now, because it was submitted early, technically that period is then tolled, is what that is called. And it would be tolled from 60 days from the date that we approve the findings of fact, conclusions of law, which I think was just last month. And so 60 days from then, if you do not respond at all, it's deemed a denial that you do not wish to reconsider its decision. If you do decide to reconsider the decision, whether it is to reverse, affirm, or modify, that requires the process to start again, so that the applicant and any interested member of the public would have an opportunity to testify, et cetera, et cetera. So it kind of starts the ball rolling again. And any questions generated based upon what I just said?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes.
I'd always have some question. As a councilman, I'd like to hear from both Ms. LaFever and the applicant. Give them 8 to 10 minutes and hear them out. Maybe there's new testimony, maybe there isn't. That's what my thoughts would be.
It's up to you guys.
Mayor, I agree.
Councilwoman Glover.
I agree with what Brad said. Let's hear them talk.
I agree.
Okay. Ms. LaFever, would you like to come up and speak?
I didn't think I got
You don't have to.
He can
You
go
don't-
for.
I'll let you go first. Ensure the
The order would be, since you're the maker of the motion, they go first, and then the other side gets to respond.
Well, I didn't think I
And
got
a
to
song
speak.
and a dance.
I didn't think I got to speak tonight because you never can speak if it's on the agenda. So,
You're on the agenda.
Yeah.
You're on the
Yeah.
I know, but you can't in the very beginning, and
Not in
it's
the
not
beginning, no.
and it's not a public hearing, and I've always been told I can't talk. So
Unless you're on the agenda. It's all good. Go ahead.
And you don't have
If you have anything new, if you don't, if your letter covered everything, you don't have to say anything.
well, you guys read my letter, obviously. I think everybody got it. I found a whole lot of, when the decision was made, I don't think it met your own standards that is required with annexation, approval of a PUD, and specifically amendment of a zoning or, under the rezones, because that is being rezoned. That never even got, everybody had that up on the projector a few meetings before that, and there was 11 items that got said that night. They were all listed up there, and they told the council, you need to be able to meet all these requirements. I've looked over the findings of fact. I've seen them all. Those 11 items, they're nowhere in those findings of fact. They only go over the annexation and the PUD part. And I don't believe if they went through each of those items, which you could see with my highlights and the certain questions, it would not have met it. Especially, when you go under the, is it in the best interest of the city, item K? One of your duties, as the councilman, is to assist in support your own existing business, which the airport is an existing business for you. And it goes on to say, it tells, right, and it's all under your own, even from your comprehensive plan, not just from your ordinance. It says development and adoption of codes and ordinances in favor of protection of airport operations and public developments. Develop, define, and adopt a public airport zone. There's another one. That airport hazard, the overlay, that has been a thorough mess in the entire thing. And speaking of that, since I never, and I guess I can talk, there was a whole lot of things that had to do with that airport, the overlay. And in the very, very beginning of all this, back on, I don't have all my stuff, July 17th, I believe, it went to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Brock stated in that meeting with them that the airport was just fine with it. They didn't, I can't, that was asked there. There was no problem there. You were at that meeting as well. ITD, no problem. And then everybody found out as this started to roll that there was a lot of people that had problems. And the minutes that I know some of you got in one of my emails that I sent a long time ago, I know that Becky does have it because I was allowed to give that. I checked first. I was allowed, so I know she got it. The night of that one meeting, Brad was the only one that got it. Mike didn't get it. You didn't get it. I don't, as I recall. Bundy didn't get it. He got it after the fact, when the email was all working again. So I don't think that Mike or Brendan, either one of them, probably
Still never have received anything.
Yeah. So I know that Brad had it, and I know that it was sent to her. But I included in that the minutes from the next night after that Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the airport board's minutes. And they were, they knew nothing about that development there. And they were told, and it says it right in the minutes, Brock told them it was too late. It was already a done deal, but it would be good if we all met to get the overlay done for future development. And so people wonder why the airport didn't get real involved. You check their minutes. I included that in that email. And that's exactly what it says. They did not know nothing about it. So I think from the get-go, all of this, I don't think everything was presented truthfully. Things changed. The developer, originally, because Daniel, who was the original, or Danny, however you want to go, who was here, he gave presentation, and I quoted that in my email, I believe. He gave an estimation for what they were going to cost. I can't even remember now. I tried to say something about it at one meeting, but I couldn't talk, remember, because it wasn't a public hearing. But I went back through all the tapes, and I found the tape where he gave this one set of price, and then I'm not even sure, I don't know if it's Olga, I don't know if it's Oleg, I don't even know if it's Daniel Sr., because that got said here one day. So whoever, he stated that the prices keep going up and up and up. Well, when he gave that testimony, you compare it to the original number. If the prices are going up, how did the price fall like $125,000? It was what it was going to be now, what they would be selling for. There was a substantial, huge number difference. And then, anyway, I guess lastly, and you guys have seen my letter, I don't believe you should have been involved in it. Especially making the final decision. That is economic gain.
So Tracy,
And you know that I've been your friend for years.
For sure.
We're still years. I know. I mean, I've been your friend for years, and I'm just saying this.
So Tracy, can you tell me how this development is affecting your property, or that's what I want to know. How is this one development affecting you?
It isn't actually. So we all know there's a bigger picture here, because we had that everybody claimed nobody knew nothing about the very first time I got ready to speak. Greg from Abundant Life Church got up, and he's talking about Liberty Estates. And I'm like, when I got up to talk, I said, I thought I was here to talk about Runway, but evidently we have Liberty. And so, one, I just don't think it's right, because it is leapfrog to use the airport. I mean, that's silly. And if you look at any of the maps I've ever shown, that everything around that, even if it got developed out to the furthest you could do it, to the furthest, and annex it into the city, you are going to have a blob like this. It is all completely county, all the way around it. Highway 51, Airbase Road, My Street, which is the next one. Got Flyby, you got Smith. It's just gonna be an island. And that is not the way development, in your ordinance, it reads the same way. It would, I mean, even if you just, like I said, I'm sure this is the beginning. You know, you get this little piece in, and then there's a couple more big ones, and pretty sure after hearing about Liberty Estates, it's just gonna go up here and come right there, and you're gonna have just this, nothing with county, and that's where it's gonna affect me.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes?
I have 2 questions for Ms. LaFever. How would this development affect your life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness? And how would this development affect your property in particular?
Well, they've already said, for one, that, well, and they don't even know, even with this specific one, I don't think they're ever going to be able to have the right access to get in anyway. I'm not so sure. But Airbase Road is a fiasco. It's a total fiasco as it is now. Anyone that has to drive it every day and turn off on one of ours, like my street, you take your life into your own hands every time. And if you're coming out, going towards the base, you know, it's the same way. Because you got all the military traffic going back and forth. You know, I've always said the water, but I know the water is beating a dead horse, so I don't even bring it up anymore. I know that you guys use your own wells and all that, but it all comes from the same aquifer, and the lower you're going to supply all these other places, that makes mine go dry.
Yeah.
And it's already gone dry before. Yeah. So, and my well is 600 and, what did I say it went to, 50? Is that what mine is? I don't even, around 650 feet now. And I even know, I've looked at the paperwork that Rich gave, you know, it's, some of your wells are only 500 and something. So, I just think this whole entire, it was pushed. I don't think correct people got to speak. The airport, like I said, the airport shouldn't, I think somebody should care about the airport. And it's commercial along there. It's commercial for a reason. Don't need all those houses. But they will. So to go a little bit to your question, the further it goes out, it will be my street. Mine will be the street that is going to be able to access any of that. And I believe ITD mentioned that. I think Carl mentioned it when he was at one of the meetings. So yeah, it is going to affect me. I would never sign off on anything, but you know, when you get to that point, I mean, I don't even think you have a choice. So
It's going to affect anybody that's...
So Tracy is the applicant, so I'm sorry, please.
So then the applicant is only going to talk, he's not going to bring a gaggle of people up? That's
No,
not
Tracy
fair,
is
Mr. Sykes.
No, Tracy is the applicant of the,
So then you're only going to let Olga talk? When he comes up, the developer, you're only going to let the
no,
developer
I'm letting
talk?
Tracy talk right now.
I know,
She's
but
the one
when-
with the complaint. So can we please have, just please, okay? I know you're frustrated, I do, I know it. But please, let Tracy speak.
well, I mean, I found so many different, there's been so many things. You guys already know it. I made you have to re-advertise, I don't know how many times, redo public hearings, because it's all rushed. I used to be a planner. That's what I did with the county. I was a planner. That's how I know all these little details, and that's why I look at them so close. It's just been, it's been a rushed thing. I mean, how many special meetings did you have with something got tabled, and then you're supposed to get information, and then all of a sudden, there's gonna be a special meeting on the next Monday at 4:30 in the afternoon, when a lot of people have to work during the day. I mean, we didn't even go through 2 weeks between things to come up with information. It just, I don't know if I've ever seen you guys actually too many times. Just, there's been so many meetings over this that weren't even like scheduled and special in certain times. And I mean, I have to go and physically, it's like you have to, I'm not gonna go there where I'm gonna say, but no, no, something else. But no, it's like the only way you're gonna know anything is if you just look and look and look. Thankfully, Tiffany, she emailed me weeks ago and let me know about this tonight. But I will tell you, I went on to get the agenda on Saturday, and I'm like, there isn't an agenda. But then I looked again, and I thought, well, what happened on February 11th, which was Friday? There was no, it was today's agenda.
It's on the wrong day.
It's on the wrong day, listed there. So, I mean, it's just those little things that even, you know, if it wasn't, if Tiffany would not have told me that it was tonight, I wouldn't even have seen an agenda for tonight. I mean, I wouldn't have bothered. You know, I was just getting it because I knew I was supposed to be here tonight. But there,
Mr. Mayor?
Well, and Tracy, I want you to know, we hear you, and that's why we made sure, no matter what, that we wanted to make sure that you got the information, the time, the date, everything.
oh, and she did.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes?
I had a comment for legal. I just want to make sure we followed all the procedural lawful things in regard to this.
Yes.
And then I wanted to ask Ms. LaFever one last question. Ms. LaFever, how would this development affect you, your life, your property, your pursuit of happiness into the future?
Well, I wouldn't be real happy with having people living right on me. I could possibly be losing my water. My street would become totally... You take your life in your... You'd be taking your life in your own hands every time you leave the place. And I love my house. I've been there a long time. I don't want to move because all of a sudden I have, you know, 5 billion houses around me or anything like that. And I don't think it's following any of your own ordinances or anything. It shouldn't even be to this far. As far as I'm concerned, we should not be sitting here right now. I should have never had to say anything. People should have been able to read their own ordinances and come to the conclusion, because it just doesn't follow it. I'm not going to say that I feel really bad for, I'm going to speak, for a lot of the, you know, these business owners on Airbase Road, and they're going to be losing some access. You guys can, you're acting like they're not. Well, the requirements made by ITD, they actually are going to lose some of their property because you have to have that shoulder there, and the shoulder I think has got to be 12 feet. I believe. Like I said, I don't have all the stuff in front of me. It has to be 12 feet. Right now, I asked one of my, how wide is that shoulder right now? And I think they told me 6 or 8. I don't even know. But you're going to have to go into their property. Their property size is going to decrease. I mean, it's going to decrease. And that deceleration lane, that they're going to lose access. And it's not right to do. It's just not right. It's not morally right to do. You can't. I understand the housing need. I get it. But you have plenty of space to work. And you have plenty of developments out there already approved. And that would be actually contiguous. You know, I know I heard Mike say at the last meeting I was at. Here's a perfect example, and it was what was going up right over there off of Paiute. When he said, and I think you were comparing it to what I'm talking about, and you said, this is a perfect example of something squared off. There is no comparison from that off of Paiute to out there off of Air Base Road, because that is contiguous. It has city all around it. It is totally city around it. This project out there has no city. The closest is half a mile, the Chevron. That is the closest, outside of an airport across the 5-lane state highway. Well, 4-lane with the suicide. So,
Councilman Brennan?
Tracy, just real quick. I appreciate your passion for this, and you've seen how I've been the whole time on this. But the information that we have in front of us, right, from the professionals, is that there's only one person, one affected party, whether it's a family or business or whatever, one group, I don't know the right word, that's going to lose their access. But they have that control, whether they give up their access to the developer or not. According to the length of that de-acceleration lane, no one else will lose direct access to their property. So that's the information that we have in front of us.
but if you read all of that from ITD, okay, so in phase 1, that is the minimum, is the 325-foot deceleration lane. If that goes into full development, it's going to go to over 1,000 or like 1,000.
And probably all those other business owners will have the right to say yes or no at that point.
But what, okay, so you approve it, so then what happens? Okay, so you got the 300. They put in phase 1. You've already approved, and they go to phase 2, and they got to make the lane longer. Now, I highly doubt that anybody's even going to stop them from starting their phase 2 before they get this whole deceleration lane even out further. But how do you stop what's already been done? You've already started with the phase 1. I mean, we all know it's going to be a longer deceleration lane. I mean, we've been told that.
I don't think we can act now for what's not in front of us, though.
Well, that's fine. But I am going to tell you, it's not, annexing it alone, annexing it is going against your ordinance. It's going against your own ordinance. If you guys don't like your ordinance and you think it ought to be different, then you probably should rewrite it and then rehear it. Make it where it fits whatever you want. Everybody says to think about the future. You know, everybody wants future. Everybody wants growth, you know, just like this loves. Why don't you think about the future and what's going to happen when this does go in or gets to full development, what it's going to do to the airport, what it's going to do to all these businesses along Air Base Road. Public safety at that. I mean, that's just ridiculous. You know what I do. You know what my job is, and having responders figure out, if you tell somebody to go out Air Base Road past the Chevron, a city cop, they're going to laugh at you. They're going to be like, huh? And then you're going to put something in here, and then it grows to this little island right here. That all comes from what I have to do. I have to make sure then that every ESN number in there is correct. And a lot of times, even when they're in there, a city person will say, no, that's in the county. You know, I'm serious. It happens all the time. And the county will say the same thing. No, that's in the city. Because when you do that, and it happened, it used to happen all the time right down there at the metal place. What was it, Shorty's? Is that what that one?
United.
Across from Meadow. Yeah, United. You know, one thing there, one city, one's county, one city, one's county. You wouldn't believe when law enforcement or fire, it didn't matter who it was. You call for whatever there, and they'd all be arguing about, well, that's city, that's county, that's city. You know what? Just go. Figure it out later, but that is the reality of what happens. And putting something like that, I mean, that public safety is, maybe you ought to base it on that.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes?
Can we hear from the applicant with the same amount of time that we allowed Ms. LaFever?
Good evening. Been a long agenda. Peggy Bresky, do I need to give you my address?
Who are you with?
Yeah, with Salaber Associates Engineers at 14510 Frost Road, Caldwell.
So hang on a second, really quick, okay, Peggy?
Mm-hmm.
Paul, is it all right that she speaks for the applicant, or does the applicant?
They could
I'm
have whoever
representing.
be their representative.
Mhm.
Okay.
Could be a lawyer, could be whoever they want.
Okay, go ahead, Peggy.
Okay, thank you. And it actually is at the applicant's lawyer's recommendation that the owner and developer bring in an urban planner. Given the extent and the timeline with which this process and this application has gone through. And so they wanted to make sure that all areas of code, all areas of concern that were provided by the appellant were addressed. So do forgive me if there's a detail that I'm not entirely aware of. I just got information and we had a long debriefing meeting today to pull me into the project, whereas I had not been involved with it prior. But I am an urban planner and have been in the industry for almost 15 years. Two of the folks on the bench tonight are aware of who I am, but Mayor and Commissioner, Councilman, I used to be a contract planner for the city of Mountain Home. So I was the contract planner for 3 years. That was during Courtney's time and just right before Brock. And when Brock was hired, then my contract as contract planner for the city was no longer necessary. I wrote the downtown master plan, the 2018 downtown master plan, which won an award, APA Idaho Outstanding Plan of the Year award. And then immediately thereafter, I wrote the 2020 comprehensive plan. So the plan that's being referenced with regard to everything that's been discussed tonight is the plan that I authored, which also won the same award the following year, the Outstanding Plan of the Year award for the American Planning Association for Idaho. So I'm going to just go in order and then address the appellant's comments. Afterward, I want to just make sure that council members and mayor, you all understand, and I know that you received a response letter from the developers, from the applicant's attorney, and it mentions, and I think Councilman Stokes, that's why you were asking what the damage is and what the injury is with regard to the approval of such application. So I know that you've referenced that. As I looked through the appellant's letter, I have lots and lots of notes, again, scribbled through in a little bit of a hasty fashion this afternoon in preparation for discussing this. And the first thing that should be noted, and I think that it must have been brought up at some point, but I'm going to bring it up again, is that all of the application, the project design, the project accesses, everything with the project is in compliance with existing city code, zoning code. It is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. It is in compliance with future land use map, as a matter of fact. I'm going to give you a little bit of a history lesson, if you don't mind. During the adoption period of the comprehensive plan, one of the things that did not align with the timeline of the comprehensive plan update, as we were in a hurry to work through it, was that though we had discussed, the city, meaning we, at the time I was representing the city, had had discussion with Elmore County, their planning division, on what the area of impact should be updated to and expanded to for the new comprehensive plan, as it had not been updated since before the 2008 plan. Which was just a reiteration of, I think, the 1998 plan or the 2000 comp plan. Needless to say, we came to agreement, city and county, on what the new area of impact would be, what the new codes would be, what the new land designations would be, etc. And that is actually listed on page 39 of the comprehensive plan. I did not bring my laptop. I didn't know how much time I would have tonight. But if you want to reference that, I have it on my phone and I can email it and forward it to all of you. On page 39, it references what the intended area of impact expansion would be for the future land use map. And at that time, it was referenced in the comp plan and by reference made a part of the plan, that within that 6-month time period, within 2020, which is when the comp plan was adopted, that future land use plan update would be adopted once the Elmo County had gone through their process of adoption, which needed to happen before it could be integrated into the updated comp plan for the city. But that was the intent, and it is shown on page 39. So with that being said, the area that we are speaking about and that is being requested to be annexed in sits within that area of impact that was intended and referenced in the updated comp plan. So given that, the site sits within the area of impact, or the intended area of impact. I know that Courtney left, Brock came on, there's always some transition, and he jumped right into 2 different roles, and so I'm sure that's where that 6-month timeline of adoption of that new future land use map just didn't happen. But the intent was still there, and it's still referenced in the comp plan. So that being said, I just wanted to mention that relative to compliance, this application, this subdivision is in compliance with all necessary code, whether it's zoning code, future land use, comp plan, all of that. I'm going to go through the appellant's letter and as well as her comments tonight, so I can speak to and respond specifically to what her concerns were. Her first comment was that the rezone, that the application is not in compliance with the rezone, and their reason for that is this is not a rezone. When a parcel or parcels are annexed into the city, it is an annexation and zoning designation, because that zone, whatever that property is zoned in the county, is not the same as what it would be zoned in the city. So an annexation / zoning designation is very different than a rezone. The annexation just dictates, we're pulling this in, here's what it is zoned. It's not changing a zone, it's designating a zone now that it's going to be city land. Does that make sense? And therein lies the reason that the 11 attributes and items for compliance that Ms. Lefevre mentions are not listed, is because it's not a rezone. So those 11 items were not necessary to be in compliance. When she mentioned looking at the FCOs, the conditions of approval, she said they're not in there, and they're not in the FCOs because they do not apply. Rezone requirements do not apply to an annexation and zoning designation. 2 different things. She did mention item K, and I'll go through it because I do want to address her concerns. Is the proposed zoning amendment in the best interest of the city? I'll get back to that. She kind of went a little out of order. I'm going to go in a little bit of order. So again, rezone, it's not a rezone. All items per code for the annexation are in compliance. Page 40 of the comp plan does show this as a future growth area. She mentions in the appellant's letter that keep city limit boundaries that are squared off and not irregular in shape. If anybody has looked at the city limits, the city limits are already very linear rather than boxy. It's not ideal, but it is what it is. And a lot of that is because the Air Force Base. So growth can tend to go towards where there are jobs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that is a goal in the comprehensive plan, I know because I wrote it. However, if you look at page 40 of the comp plan, there is a map with bubble areas, colored bubbles. And those are designated as future growth areas. And keep in mind that when this was being drafted and adopted, the city council members that were in office at the time reviewed this. We worked in close correlation with those city council members, with the P&Z Commission, and both city attorneys went through and approved the comp plan for compliance with LUPA, which is Idaho Title 65. So future growth areas were listed. This growth area is one of the biggest growth areas listed on that comp plan map, is where this site is. So that is an anticipated growth area, and the reason, the rationale that that was created as a growth area was because the air base and the families needed housing in bad form. we all know, and it mentions it in the comp plan, that Mountain Home has been experiencing a housing crisis. It's been well known for years and years. As a matter of fact, when we did the comp plan survey, public survey, which was posted for 2 months, one of the items noted that I just wanted to bring up to you was that within that public survey, we pulled all the information. We worked in collaboration with BSU Idaho Policy Institute on that survey, and 95.63% of the residents that responded, there was over 1,400 responses to the survey, which is over 10% of the population at the time, which is unheard of. But that just shows a very engaged community. 95.63% of residents believe the need for more residential development. It's right in the comp plan. Okay, that's on page 42. I make mention of the comp plan a lot because this is the policy document with which the city leaders, the elected officials, have to reference to understand what the community desired, what the leaders at the time, what the city staff and everybody that's involved had for a vision for the future of their city. And so as a policy document, that is what I'm referencing so that you can understand. I'm trying to help everybody to understand, including the public, that this application falls in line absolutely with numerous chapters of the comp plan. Housing, population, economic development. Brock mentioned earlier that they're going to be bringing in 350 jobs. I don't know if this was the same thing with the Ambrose thing, but that was 65 jobs in the first year, another 50 the second year. He mentioned something else with 350 jobs, and when Brock was talking earlier in the departmental presentation, you know, he said we need plats, we need housing, because for those jobs, folks need to have housing to live here to fill those jobs. So that was the driving force of the comp plan, was sparking interest and catalyzing interest by developers and site selectors to choose to develop in Mountain Home, because prior to this comp plan, this town was in trouble. Builders didn't want to come out here, not even CBH, not even Hubble Homes. And I know that because I worked for both of them at one point in my longer ago life. So, but nobody would come out here. Courtney worked hard. The mayor worked hard to bring site selectors here, and their comments always were, where's our workforce? You don't have enough people for us to employ people. Where's our workforce? And without housing, you don't have the workforce. The base said, we're transporting people, 800 families, 800 service families to Boise, because there's not enough housing in Mountain Home. The base and Courtney talked regularly, because of course Courtney, you know, former Air Force. I created a chapter in the comp plan to include the Air Force Base, because none of the former comp plans had a chapter about the Air Force Base, and they're a key employer and key for, you know, the citizenry in town. And so I spoke with them, and their number one need, housing. We need housing for our people. So that, if you'll look at it, and I invite you to revisit the comp plan again, and I'm sure that you did when you came into office, and again, I invite you to look at it again. The top 5 critical items in that comp plan, one of them was housing. Another one was jobs, economic development. That is what this is all about. And so I want to help everybody to understand that that is why developers that are coming in now are excited to do this. But I'm going to share with you my own personal opinion, being a planner and working on preliminary plats, and I've probably done it in 8 different states, in multiple cities all over the country. I've never seen a project as simple and as really just straightforward as this go through 7 public hearings to get approved. And so I think that that really does show on the developer, on the owner's part, a commitment to the community that a lot of developers probably that I know have been my clients would probably say, okay, we're done with that town, let's move on. But they have a commitment and they want to fulfill that commitment. And that's why I'm here tonight, is to try to help the public and the appellant to understand why this is important and to answer concerns. So going back to that, item K, numerous items on here mentioned tonight by the appellant were with regard to the airport. The airport, there's no overlay district, so that could not have been considered at the time. Protection of the airport is certainly important, but as is standard, when applications come in, the Planning and Development Division will route the plat to roads and to utilities and to the engineer and to surveyors, and they route it to all the appropriate staff and professionals to review it. Now, I heard her mention that the airport said that they don't know about it, but then I also heard Brock mention that the airport is fine with it. I would have to believe the latter, though I don't know which is true. But in looking at the airport, I was a part of bringing the GIN group in with Turner House Depot. They were my client at Horrocks, and we engaged with them. I was not the planner on that, they already had a planner. But I integrated and helped kick off the engineering of that project. That project is 800 feet away from the airport and has 269 residential units in 27 acres and 4.5 acres of commercial property. That is a mixed-use development within 800 feet of the airport. This is across a 5-lane highway, at least a 100-foot right-of-way, with off-site airport land. Further back even than that, okay? Based on what I know, when I was writing the comp plan and including public services, I had meetings with the airport district folks, and they wrote their chapters. We collaborated on it, condensed it in. It's an appendix in the comp plan, what they wrote, and then our chapter was in there. So I'm very familiar with what airports need. This particular project.
Peggy, really
Yeah.
quick, Councilman Brent has a question.
Sure.
I've been dying to ask, like,
Sure,
I don't mean to cut you off at all.
No, you're fine.
I'm trying to keep it in the same category as what
Yes.
you're talking about.
Yes.
You've mentioned multiple times encouraging us to refer to the comprehensive plan. You mentioned page 40 with the little bubbles, which is the anticipated growth area. This area in question has a red bubble around it. And then it basically refers me to page 44 for figuring out what
For
red
the
is.
zones, right, for the, yeah.
And red is commercial. It's
Right.
not residential.
If you look right below that, it's yellow, which at that point was residential. And bubble graphs, bubble maps like that, it's not the same as a zoning map, which actually follows parcel lines and follows roadway lines. The bubble maps just show this is an area that's going to have some commercial, this is an area that's going to have residential down below the commercial, commercial's on the frontage, residential's down below. So if you see there's a lot of gaps in there, it's not that those gaps are not going to be developed, but the bubble is showing generally this is going to be commercial, it's on the frontage. Right behind that is residential, which is the yellow bubble. So if you notice, that's very different from what the land use map shows, where it actually aligns to parcel lines.
Well, what you're referring us to, right, is just what's in front of me, and there's no property lines in this, so I can't say where red and yellow mix or whatever turns
That shows
orange.
the intent.
But without property lines, it sure looks like this development is actually not within any of the anticipated growth
If you look at
bubbles.
page 39.
Okay.
Oh, you've got it printed front and back. Okay. That shows the anticipated future land use map. And that shows the frontage along Airbase Road as red.
Current anticipated. I'm looking at it on page 40.
Okay, is that page 40?
I think she's wanting this one right here.
Sorry, just
Yeah, that's the one that the mayor's pointing to.
Which
That-
one?
39.
That small one on 39.
That's the current?
That was the anticipated, agreed upon area of impact and future land use map that was to be adopted.
That says current. This one says anticipated over here.
I can't see what you're pointing to. Okay, that is the anticipated growth areas with bubbles, which is not specific. The one that the mayor is holding up shows the agreed upon with Elmore County expanded future land use with the area of impact expanded. And if you overlay that over that site sits within the orange zone, which is zoned as residential.
It sure looks red to me, but we'll overlay it.
Yeah, we can,
Okay.
absolutely. We can go over that later.
That's all. Thank you.
But, yeah, absolutely. So with regard to the airport, the airport overlay doesn't exist yet, hasn't been adopted, can't be considered. Brock had clearly spoken with them, the airport's fine with it. ITD, I know that they spoke with Carl. I don't know if they spoke with Ken and Sarah and Shona, but we have a letter from ITD. The appellant mentioned she sent an email. I just want to address her concerns.
Sure.
She sent an email. I'm not sure I understood what that conversation was about. Maybe that some of you had it and some of you didn't. I'm not sure what that meant. She says she believes everything was not presented truthfully. It changed based on Danny's statements. Pricing changed. When you go through 7 public hearings, which I think you guys do 2 a month. So, I mean, do you guys do 2 hearings a month?
2 regular meetings.
2 regular meetings, okay. So it looks like it went from 4-month time period, 4 or 5 months? By the time it was 6, okay.
4 to 6.
So 4 to 6 months. Yeah, so 4 to 6 months, things are going to change. And I don't know what they were talking about pricing. Is it pricing of the units? Is it pricing of whatever? If we've all been paying attention and looking at the housing market, a 6-month timeline has been huge. I built my house just in time, 2016. 2020, I refinanced it, and it was worth literally double. Would I pay that for my house now? No, I would not pay over $500,000 for my house. I would not. But literally in 5 years, it doubled. 4 years, rather. It literally doubled. So pricing is going to be changing the longer this process takes. Cost for materials. Richard Cutie was talking about pipe has gone up 30%. I do know that for a fact because I'm project managing a construction project on a plat, and pipe literally has gone up 30% in price. That's going to affect whatever pricing is discussed. So she said the mayor's wife is a loan officer or something. I don't know how to speak to that. I'm not really sure what that meant, so I'm gonna not comment on that. So the comment was it will be annexed, it will be an island. It is contiguous, so it won't be an island. A lot of folks don't know that rivers, bodies of water, lakes, roadways do not create a lack of contiguity. That doesn't apply. So it's as if that roadway didn't exist. Is that next parcel city? Yes, it's the next parcel of city. So there will be contiguity. So a lot of folks don't know that the roadway doesn't count. So the roadway doesn't count. So there is contiguity. Comment that don't have the right access. Airbase Road is a fiasco. ITD owns that roadway. They have reviewed the plat. They have made comments. They've stated their requirements. The developer will comply with those requirements. In my mind, the requirement that is going to have the deceleration lane is going to have to remove that church's access. That church's access is going to have to move onto that roadway that the neighborhood is going to access. That actually improves safety by not having another immediate access to a highway. That's going to have people exiting and entering that site from a side road. So that is eminently safer. So this project actually increases safety in that immediate vicinity. With regard to the wells and the aquifer, I work with enough cities and I've worked on enough projects to understand that the individuals that live on their individual parcels with their individual wells typically will access a completely different aquifer than the city services aquifers. So one will not and should not impact the other. I'm not an engineer, so I'm not. That is true. We're working right now on the city of Cascade. I'm their contract planner, and we are working on locating sites for 2 new wells for the city because of their insanely explosive development. So I'm.
Hang on a second, Peggy. Dina,
What?
will you please stop it?
Oh, you gotta laugh.
Please be respectful and let her speak.
Well, yeah, well.
Or I'm going to ask you to leave,
if
please.
If somebody has some duct tape, they can get it out and I'll put it on my mouth.
Thank you, Mayor.
Megan.
Thank you, Mayor. That's fine. But that is a fact. And so it's common for county residents to be worried about their aquifer. I would be too. But these are completely divergent situations. 13, okay, the comment, this project was pushed through. It doesn't make sense. A 6-month process for a plat is not typically a push-through project. I do know, because I worked on Turner House Depot, that project went through in about 3 months. Really good collaboration. Brock was incredible. Everybody was online. Everybody saw, we've got new housing coming in. Yay, this is exciting. That took 3 months for a very complex PUD. This project, this plat is not complex. And it's addressing the needs of the comp plan. Councilman Brennan, she did make a comment that I think speaks to what you were talking about, that it's commercial, and zones and designations are meant with intent, but will typically be looked at as an overarching global situation. And if you want to go through the comp plan together, I would welcome that, because I put my heart and soul into this comp plan. So I would happily engage with any council member to talk about how this came about, since it was before your guys' time in office. Okay, so the next one was, it will be my street for access. It's not. It's the one to the east. I apologize. So her street will not be accessed, so she won't be experiencing additional traffic on her street. Again, 17, we had to redo the hearings. You had to redo the postings. That was a measure of whatever happened at the city. The city does the postings in this particular town. Some of them require the applicant to do it. The city did that. The developer said, oh, we have to do it. We have to push it out a little bit because we have to renotice. Okay, we understand. Not ideal for them. Time is money when you're developing and wanting to sell land, but they did it. So again, from what I've seen and jumped into this was certainly not rushed. There were a lot of questions. Councilman Brennan, you had a ton of questions, which you always do, which I think is honestly really good. I mean, how do you make a decision without having your questions answered? And Councilwoman Garvey, sorry. That's all right. I know that you do too. I mean, really good questions, and so I don't sense that this was rushed. So the noticing, again, she mentioned February 11th was not, but it's the 14th. Okay, that has nothing to do with the applicant. And then again, she talked about she was a planner. None of this meets code. I assure you, I've reviewed this. Literally, I pulled in as fast as I could get over here, and for the last hour before the hearing started, was looking at all of the code, and everything is in compliance with this project. Again, finally, the discussion of the lanes were discussed. It's going to require a 12-foot lane and an 8-foot shoulder. I don't know about that owner's property size just decreasing. I would assume, and I haven't seen the drawings in detail, but that's probably well within the right of way. If it's not, compensation will be made. And then that was the final comment. So, and I don't want to go into further. The application has already been approved at the last hearing. I think that the council did a great job in ensuring that every detail was looked at with this application, in great detail. I mean, I was reading some of the minutes from the hearings earlier today. I mean, I was really trying to catch up on this, and so I don't think that that council, that P&Z commission, that council members and mayor, I think that you all saw that this is in compliance. It's a benefit to the city. It provides housing. It provides workforce for the site selectors that are coming in. I don't know where that gentleman went, but this is what the city of Mountain Home was in dire need of when we were drafting that comp plan. So I agree with Brock. He's a planner, I'm a planner. We both see things in a certain way, but the housing crisis that was discussed 2 years ago when we adopted that plan, thankfully it's getting solved now. There's interest now. Builders are coming in, developers are coming in. Thankfully, that was what we needed. That was what you needed. I'm not a contractor anymore, so I can't say what we needed, but that's what was needed, and that's what's happening. So I would hope that, giving consideration to the individual that's appealing it, even though they're not a city resident, that's unusual I was looking at it going, where's this person? Typically only a city resident can complain, but I appreciate that city council looks at everybody as this is our community, so everybody should be heard. And we respect and we appreciate the fact that we've been able to respond tonight. And we hope that you'll see what you saw when you approved it, and after the 7 hearings, that everybody got their questions answered, that this is what the city needs, and it's in the best interest of the city. So, at this point, do you have any questions for me? I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Stoll.
I'll have some questions too.
Yes, please.
You know, I don't know where you think I stand on this, but my mind has been made up for a while, actually. I always thought it was a residential island. I thought leapfrog development was spot on. I thought there was an undue cost to taxpayers as far as fire and police and emergency services. And when I'm not talking about one day driving out there, I'm talking about thousands and thousands of trips. And that's kind of where I stand as a councilman.
May I respond, Councilman?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So totally fair, fair enough, and everybody's worried about that. You know, about the services. So what I would ask is, if Miss Lefevre, who's in the county, or any of her neighbors, I'm not picking on her, but if any of her neighbors call 911, who responds?
County sheriff.
Okay, so now I'm literally asking. I don't know the answer to that. Because in some places, the city will respond because it's just right there. So I'm genuinely asking the question.
And we have pockets of county within the city. Just
that's so common, and it's not ideal. It's never ideal. In any, I'm working on a project right now that there's one parcel, it's 10 acres, and it's county land in the middle of Meridian.
And I think that's what I'm trying to say by not approving these leapfrog developments and create more county islands.
So what I would respond in that is that based on the comp plan and based on the existing city limits and the existing shape of city land, and giving consideration to the Air Force Base and the staff and the families and the troops and everybody there, okay, and looking at the comp plan, looking at the agreed upon with the county and the city expanded area of impact that really legitimately should have been adopted by now. It fell through the cracks. I actually, for about 3 months, maybe 4 months in Mayor, you might remember this, after Brock got started, I was like, Brock, and I CC'd the mayor, hey, have you guys got that worked out yet with the county? You're supposed to be adopting that because it says that in the comp plan, and that's a policy document, so we have to be doing what the policy document says. And they're like, oh yeah, we'll get to it, we'll get to it. And, hey guys, but then what happened? Explosion. Developers, site selectors, exciting. So they got really busy. But we know that it was agreed upon and the intent was there. I checked some of the records that I still had access to because I did this when I was at a different firm. I'm no longer at Horrocks, I'm at Salver Associates. But that was what the plan dictated. The plan dictated integration and moving out towards the Air Force Base to alleviate traffic on the inner network of that inner part of Mountain Home, so that the infrastructure is already there. It's a 5-lane highway. And that there's very little left to do except for expanding the wet utilities out to that site, which is a cost for the developer. Once the developer pays for those wet utilities, water and sewer, to come out, how many other developers or how many other residents can now tie into that? Because they paid for that extension, and now other people are going to have access to that. So it's not actually leapfrog development when you look at what the comp plan said needed to happen. And they wanted to see more growth, which is why you'll see so many of those bubbles in that area, which is just south on the south side of Air Base Road. Obviously not the north, because that's the airport, right? But there was a lot there. And then there was little community centers that we had planned to put. This is where local commercial will be, so people, when they need to run to the store for bread, they don't have to go all the way in town and go over to Albertsons. Boom, they go 2 blocks away. So the community was planned out in community design, there's a whole chapter on community design, and it discusses that. That's actually the longest chapter, at like 15 pages for one chapter. And so that is what the comp plan designates as growth specifically in that area, to provide the needs of the Air Force Base, which the Air Force Base at that point, and Courtney was hearing it, hey, we need this. Our people are over there. Our people are in Boise. What are you doing? And so that was the goal. And that's where a lot of that growth center shows, with little community centers. So that was creating pockets of growth. It implemented, or what's the word I'm looking for? It maximized the existing infrastructure of the highway. Okay, it's built for that. It removes network congestion, people getting all the way through town to get on the freeway to drive to Boise and take your tax dollars and have economic leakage. So that was the goal, was to move in that area. So I understand the leapfrog development. Now, leapfrog development in my mind would be crossing over the freeway on 84 by the hotels and by where Love's belongs there. I like their plan, by the way. I know that spot. Ginn Group was actually going to build townhomes on that spot. But that would be leapfrog. If somebody said, I want to build a community over here. Ooh, no, not so much. But this is geared for that. The proximity to the sewer, the ponds. I mean, literally, we discussed it, and this area was specifically the growth area for all of those reasons. None of which is the least of which is reducing the impact of traffic in downtown and through that other part of town where people have to go through there. Now the community grows this way to the Air Force Base, and it's its own community. So I hope that helps you understand that was the mission, that was the goal. And you probably didn't know that because you weren't here then. So I'm glad that you've asked the question, and I'm glad that I've had the opportunity to show you. And again, I would be willing to come over and sit down with each of you guys on a day and show you, so you understand what that vision is showing developers. Because, like I said, developers weren't coming out here. Then once they got the vision, okay, yes, we want to be a part of that.
That was a long answer.
I know, I can't really win it, but you guys, honestly, man, Paula knows, I have been invested in this town, truly invested in this town for a long time. I'm a military brat. When I see a military town, I feel like I'm home.
Gotcha.
But it matters to me, and that's why my answers are long.
Go ahead. Thank you for some answers. Unfortunately, you didn't sway my mind. I'll let other councilmen and talk.
That's okay, because it was already approved.
Mayor, I know both Tracy and Peggy. I worked a little bit with Peggy when they were doing the comp plan, to where I'm quite familiar with it. I can't remember everything that's in it, but she had brought up a few things that I didn't need, that I had forgotten about, to where I'm glad she showed up, and I'm glad Tracy is here too.
Yeah.
Okay, Paul.
That's all I've got to say right now.
Council, do you want to ask other?
You want to speak, Mr. Councilman Brennan? Or I was going to ask Paul, what's the next?
He already broke me on the docks.
Right. So, Mr. Fitz,
Fair enough.
Just a question. I'm not.
No. But a lot of people don't know that. Brock knows bubble maps. He's like, oh yeah, that's just generalized.
So, Mr. Fitzer, next step.
Do you have a question first?
Not a question first. No.
Did Councilwoman Garvey?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so the question at this point, where you're at now, is there's been the motion for reconsideration. You can, unless you have any questions, or you wish to deliberate today at all, or ask me any questions about any of this, what generally you do is you would rest at this point. You have 60 days, from whatever that day was, to make a decision on this. That means that you will meet again in a public meeting forum and do that deliberation if you want to, or you do nothing and then it fails by inactivity. So if you do anything other than, so there's the open threshold question whether you will reconsider it at all. If you do decide to reconsider it at all, then there's affirm, denial, or reverse, I should say, or modify. And if any of those three are going to happen, then it kind of kicks it back into the public meeting, public hearing format. There's also the additional, we may do an executive session on some of the issues that are raised because of its potentiality for litigation one way or the other. And that's my job side of it all. But basically that's where you're at. So you can decide to do whatever you want to do tonight within some reason, and or you could table it to a date certain. It doesn't matter. This is squarely within your discretion for a motion for reconsideration.
May I ask a question of clarification of council? With regard to the letter that the attorney for applicant sent,
yes.
Does that ring true for you as far as the legal bounds? So that
yes.
does. Okay.
We are legally, what is cited in that letter is legally accurate.
Okay.
The devil's, of course, in the details as to the factual interpretation of that, and that's for them to figure out.
Hence, Councilman Stokes' questions.
But I have
Pointed.
no issue with legal.
Okay.
What is cited in there is accurate.
Okay. And I asked that for my own understanding as I move forward in assisting the applicant.
Councilman McCain.
I'd like to make a motion to set an executive session for possible litigation.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes.
Councilman McCain, do you have a date in mind, or are you thinking tonight?
No, not tonight. I'd like to think
The next regular meeting?
I would really prefer is on the 28th, since on the March 1, I'm going to be on a beach.
March it is.
I would just ask that the applicant has
like
gone
expired.
through months
So here's,
and months.
it's been motioned and seconded. My thing is I think transparency is pertinent. Why executive session, Mr. Fitzer? You should tell the council what we're up against with litigation in open forum. There's nothing to hide.
You're really going to make me mad, aren't you?
Yeah, get him.
Transparency.
Well, at a very minimum, you do need to have an open session in a public meeting. You need to deliberate as to what you wish to do. There are legal ramifications for what you decide to do. Generally, I don't like to be cited and an opponent when I'm in court later going, and Mr. Fitzer rather eloquently agreed with us in a public meeting. I don't like that. So, that's why I generally like to give you my legal advice in that regard. But if you want to do the show and
Hang on a second.
in public, that's fine.
Councilman McCain.
You have a motion on the
I
table.
know, I'm just asking him.
Call for the question.
I'm going to call for the question. All right, it's been motioned and seconded to have a executive session for the 28th.
You should do probably, here's my throwing this out for you guys, is you do, I know it's unorthodox, but if you want to get together a half hour early or something like that before, then you can have an executive session where we could discuss some of this, or do a special meeting for executive session before the 28th, telephonically or otherwise. And then on the 28th, you could finish this thing off, one way or another.
2/28, February 28th.
Because he'll be on a beach.
That's our
Lest we forget.
This is the important.
Okay, it's been motioned.
When can you make it, Paul?
Did you know I was going to be on a beach?
It's been motioned and seconded. I'll call for the question. Let's just get going.
I mean, like 3 years.
30 minutes before the next meeting. Aye.
So is that you want to make it different?
That'll work for me.
So 30 minutes before the meeting. Is that good, Councilman?
Can we make it 5 o'clock? I'm just afraid your half hour might not be enough.
I agree with her.
Okay.
That's true. Councilman Stokes
I
will be
agree
there.
with her.
5 o'clock, Mayor. I'll change my motion to 5 o'clock.
Turn the clock right now.
Okay, it's been motioned for 5 o'clock, 28th. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second. Any further deliberation?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Stokes?
my mind was already made up. I could go forward tonight.
Any further discussion? I hear you. You're hearing none, other than Councilman Stokes. I'm going to call for the question. Councilman Stokes?
Aye.
Councilman McCain?
Aye.
Councilman Brennan?
Aye.
Councilwoman Garvey?
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
It was a pleasure being around with all of you again. I missed it here.
All right.
Tiffany will place your deliberation of it on the 28th during the regular meeting.
Tracy, I really do appreciate you coming. I really do.
All right, next one on new business presentation. Another presentation. Next steps on proposed impact fees updated by Ann Westcott and Lena Consulting Group. Ann? Oh, you. Let me get some more water.
Oh, hell.
So you remember that every time now.
Lake Corners?
Late comers agreement.
Because I can never remember that term.
Put it down. There you go.
You got that well memorized?
Got it. I even wrote it down myself. I only heard like I'm trying to write it to you.
You were trying to show me while I was talking?
Next to me, we don't talk.
That's back to that thing where I don't always use the right word. Everyone knows what I'm talking about.
Because then it makes it clean.
On the left hand, there's a right hand, it's terrible.
Does anybody have any scissors? I gotta like get a snack before I go back to work.
Tonight? You want some Starburst?
Got some sugar tablets.
Reno, thanks for coming.
Oh, here's some taffy somebody put in there. I got some diabetic sugar tablets.
Boy, that's a dandy of a night.
Can I call this an official recess for a minute? Is this an official recess?
You miss Seattle?
Different for it.
Don't cut yourself trying to close it.
That's what I said. I'm like, is he qualified to use that?
Yeah. And I hope you won't be offended if I'm eating during our conversation.
And you could have a hamburger and I wouldn't care.
Okay, thank you.
He said
Well, you're giving hamburgers out? Is that what you say?
Yeah, they're cold now though.
Alrighty, and let's rock and roll. Sorry about that. I had to.
Yeah, just the one more.
Really quick, just before we begin, and I apologize for intruding, but my comments given by both Ms. Lefevre and also Ms. Bresky were contradicted multiple times during that presentation, and I tried getting your attention, being that we have one councilwoman who didn't hear what I said. So during the approval process of both Turner House Depot and Runway Estates, I was under the false assumption that the airport board did them. And I later went to a meeting where I found out that they weren't notified as they should have been. We have recently taken steps to correct that to make sure that didn't happen. At the time, to the best of my knowledge, I thought that information had been relayed towards them. I just want it to be on the record right now for everyone to hear, in particular for the people that just stormed out pointing at me, that I already stated this before, that I knew that I had thought they did, they weren't. It was my responsibility, and I take full accountability for them not knowing, just so it's on the record.
Mayor?
Councilman?
You have already done that once before in another meeting, so,
I'm just
and they
making
were
sure-
here to hear
I'm
it,
just
so.
making sure it's on the record,
Yes.
and I wanted Councilwoman Garvey to have the correct narrative.
You're doing a great job, Brock.
Sorry, Ann. Oh,
Sorry.
go
I
ahead.
thought all these people were here for me, and they all left. And I wore red for Valentine's Day and everything. All right, well, I'm gonna make this brief, but I do know we have some new people, so any questions that need to be answered. Just at the very, very highest level, just reminding you that impact fees are a one-time payment paid at building permit to allow the community to let growth pay its proportionate share of the demand they put on services. We can't use impact fees to make things better, we just can keep it from getting worse in terms of continuing the current level of service. So we have gone through an update of the city's CIP and impact fee program. We've met with your impact fee advisory committee several times. The report has been, yes.
Sorry, hey, Chief, we go outside, make sure there's no issues with anybody. Thank you. Sorry, Ann. Here's some yelling, so.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. I gotta focus here. Okay. I'm trying not to say the things that come to my mind, and I'm not doing very well at it. In all areas, not just in public meetings, but anywho. The advisory committee was a wonderful help. They had a lot of expertise, a lot of diversity in their experience. We did revise the report several times because of the input that they gave. So I'd like to just go through the report that I know you have in your packet. And oh my gosh, I had made copies of things that you could actually read that are bigger.
Are they on 11 by 17? Because that's
Yeah.
what one council member really likes.
I hope it's not bubbles, because he doesn't like bubbles.
There are no bubbles.
And where's my computer monitor? I need a bigger one.
But they're larger than in the report. I thought that might help.
Yeah, it's the same size as my screen.
We're in
Yeah.
Okay.
Here, got one more.
The other thing I just want to start out with is to remember that impact fees are a funding source. They are a way to equitably assign the impact of growth to fund capital by those who are creating the demand and not to be subsidized by existing taxpayers. So there's no right or wrong way to do this. It's just really where you want the incidence of the cost to land. So I would suggest that we start on page 7 and particularly for Councilmember Garvey. Right in the.
I think it's your big chair.
It's your chair. It's your big chair. Just to remind you that those 7 questions there are just how we go about talking about the story so that it's very user-friendly. We want to know what you have here right now to be able to provide the level of service that you provide, and how much has everyone already paid into that system. And then we're going to look ahead at what kind of growth you have, what are you going to need to build or buy in order to support that level of service, and if growth paid its way, what would they pay per household, per non-residential square foot. So we'll get right into the growth projections on page 11, and of course these are, are an estimate. They're based on a variety of different sources that we used. We feel pretty confident about them. The advisory committee agreed that that was a pretty good estimate going forward, that you might see about 2,500 new homes in your community in the next 10 years, and 1.5 million non-residential. That non-residential obviously has so much to do not only with how your residential develops, but the kind of economic incentives that you are providing and who you're able to bring in. So remember that your advisory committee meets every year, and our job is to look at these assumptions and update them when they get out of whack of reality. Police department.
Mine's getting real close.
Police department. I have to say, I've always been pretty amazed. Mountain has one of the highest levels of service of any of the clients that I have in the state. You have almost 2 sworn officers per 1,000 population. That is really good. It's harder to measure when you have a smaller population, because you still have a lot of people coming in during the day, but should be very proud of that, I think. So we are looking at, on page 13, the fact that the city has about $8 million worth of capital assets right now that support those almost 2 officers per 1,000. And this, this double check at the bottom of page 13, your people who already live in your community per household have invested almost $1,000 per house, or $0.50, 53 cents per non-residential square foot, in keeping this $8 million asset inventory in place. I won't go through this in every chapter, but I always think it's interesting, and first I want to make sure that I'm not asking development to pay a significant amount more than that, but it also lets us know how much taxpayers might be subsidizing for growth. So on page 14, or the first piece of your larger print packet, this is the capital improvement plan for the police department. When we look at your high level of service and we talk about what would be necessary if you grew at a rate of almost 50% over 10 years, what would you need? You'd need 14 more officers. Now, this was around the time that House Bill 389 came down, so we had a lovely conversation about everybody scale that. So, finance really looked at, we don't think we can't commit to 14. We don't want to build something for 14 when we can't fund that. So you'll notice in the report that we've already made an assumption that 10 officers is really all the city can commit to. And you're not committed to it, obviously, until you adopt a budget. But we're planning for 10 growth-related officers. And this is just additional space that will be required for them, because you don't have you don't have extra capacity right now. Replacing your 32 existing patrol vehicles, not impact fee eligible, but buying 10 patrol vehicles for the 10 officers is, as well as radios and weaponry for those new officers. So, out of a $4 million CIP for police, $2.3 million of it is impact fee eligible.
Quick question, does that, is there a line item for training for these new officers, or is that even?
So training is operations.
Okay.
So impact fees can only pay for capital.
Gotcha.
Good try, though.
Trying
Thought
to
you were
save
going to
cheap.
say, can we put a helicopter on here? No, you cannot use helicopters.
The state did.
It's
You
easy.
You can if you're gonna wing it.
I was like, is the AC on? Are you guys cold?
It's very cold.
Okay, I'll turn. Did you get it
Went from hot to cold, and I don't know
Yeah,
what's
we were
going
about
on
ready to
here.
burn up over here a minute ago.
Yeah, well, then now we got
Still
to.
burning up.
On page,
That's just because.
I'm
of
sorry,
merit,
Ann,
right?
I apologize.
totally fine.
I was trying to do that under the radar.
I actually was getting a little chattery, so thank you. On page 15, you'll see if we take that $2.3 million, break it out by the 75% residential, 25% non-residential that we're anticipating, divide it by the number of households, the number of non-residential square feet. If each new house paid $663, each new non-residential square foot paid 37 cents per square foot, you would get the $2.3 million over 10 years. You'd have the money to build space for 10 officers, buy 10 cars, buy weapons and radios for 10 officers. Police always goes first because it's the easiest one, although the chief is never the easiest one. But and by comparison,
HR makes up for it.
you'll notice that people in your community have invested $968. We're asking growth to pay $663. I feel comfortable when we come close or a little bit less than that buy-in number. So, kind of understanding of how I go through the process, and any questions about the CIP? Shall we talk about fire then?
You bet.
All right. Again, very nice response time for fire. Very impressive. Oh my God, but you know what? The public likes you better.
I always like firemen better.
Fireman, yeah. All right, so I'm not going to go through the assets. You understand how that piece went, but just remember that your existing. No, we'll go through. We'll go to the CIP, page 18. I should also let you know that I've been retained by Elmore County, by the Mountain Home Fire District, by the King Hill Fire District, the City of Glens Ferry. You were the first to the party, and everyone wants to be you now. So, Mountain Home Fire Protection District will be the other part of the piece of the CIP, and you'll see that there's a column of, we know they have some responsibility toward this infrastructure that you share in service delivery, and we're going to pick up that other piece on their side. I mean, they could choose not to pick it up, but then they would need to pay you in some other way for this, facility to be able to serve the demand. So for the fire department, looking at not only the amount of growth that you anticipate, but where it's going to be. Obviously, response time is what we're measuring here, so we want to make sure that you have fire stations in the right place. So there's one new fire station and then a smaller substation on the periphery, and that substation is obviously the one that the district would have the most nexus with. Those are both 100% impact fee eligible, as are 2 new engines and a squad vehicle. There are some replacements in there that are in your normal replacement budget. You're used to doing those. A little bit of equipment. Out of a $6.5 million CIP, 4.5 million of it would be collected by impact fees. And that would make that impact fee $1,338 per house, 74 cents per non-residential, and that's still very close to what the current buy-in number is, so I feel comfortable with that one. Parks, we don't see 8.5 acres per thousand, so that's also very good. You have your community invested in parks early on, and you're able to have that asset inventory. And so as we look ahead, as we met with parks, the parks professionals that you have within the city, and talked about what do we need to do to protect the integrity of this system that we're already known for in our community, so that we don't put half again as many people in there, but just the same amount of inventory. So there was discussion, a lot of discussion, not only with staff, but with the advisory committee on what are the amenities that are needed. On a base level, you can use impact fees to buy more land and develop that land. Ultimately, it was determined that what was probably more important, instead of buying land, was to further develop the recreational amenities in parks that you already have. So you will see that we have trails, playgrounds, courts, etc., so that we're expanding the recreational opportunities. I know there was a lot of conversation about resources that were needed in the southern part of the city. Then recreation center, 33% growth. So, sometimes when you don't already have an asset, but this tipping point of becoming such a much larger community in 10 years is really kind of requiring that you have a certain level of amenities. And so the fact that growth is kind of tipping this is why their pay-in would be a third of that facility. Pickleball courts, always a popular thing. And then you will see, as we move down to some of the restrooms, updated tennis courts, some of those, if we're just fixing what we have, we don't have impact fees, but if you were to add the third court, for example, then you'd have impact fees pay for that part, or the additional restroom, etc. So out of an $11.5 million CAP, $3.6 million of that is impact fee eligible. Obviously, those other big pieces that go into that are the pool for $3 million and the non-impact fee eligible portion of the rec center for $2 million. Those are things that the council can decide how and when to do. So that pool, I know there's a grant match, there's a community process for that. So that $7.8 million is not as scary as it might normally be. So when we get to the parks fee per household, non-residential does not pay parks impact fees, would be $1,416 per residential unit. And that compares to the $10,000 per residential unit that people have already paid in because you have a really impressive parks infrastructure. You will see from the memo that I put on as a cover that at the last meeting with the Impact Fee Advisory Committee, they suggested that council consider breaking out parks into residential, non-residential. And I've given you what the revised fees would be for that. Puts a little bit more of the demand or pressure on the single family than multifamily. Did I just say residential, non-residential?
Yes.
Single family versus multi.
That's what I meant. Yes. Broken into single and multifamily. All right, let's see if I can get through this chapter and say what I mean. So you take the growth in number of household units broken out by single and multi and residential, and we multiply those by the trip generation rate. So this is just a mathematical, boring engineering thing. Which loves this kind of stuff. We talk about what the additional generation of traffic will be from all of these additional houses and non-residential developments. And on page 27, you'll see the capital improvement plan for streets. The capital improvement plan was a lot longer originally, and that's how it should be, is that we really should talk about what is it that we need when we go through then this process of fiscally constraining things with Paula to, okay, what realistically could we have in terms of general funds to be able to match or offset these impact fees. So staff really went through several iterations of constraining this to where they felt it could be supported by general fund as well. And you will see a variety of projects that vary between 40% and 100% impact fee eligibility. If you're widening a road, generally you don't use impact fees for the lanes that are already there. That's why you see some lower percentages. Southwest Autumn, a new road, only needed because of growth, 100% impact fee eligible. Intersection projects, again, it doesn't matter if you choose to do a roundabout or a signal. These are just sort of an estimated cost for those types of things, but these are the intersections at which they're most likely to occur. And then if you add more lane miles, you generally need additional equipment as well, plows and sanders, so you see that in there. $11.4 million CIP, $10.2 million of it is impact eligible. You see the fee calculation on page 28 of being $2,141 per single family, $1,146 multifamily, and $3.30 non-residential. Page 29 is a full summary of these fees. So if these were adopted as is, every new single-family home would pay $5,558, multifamily $4,563, non-residential $4.40. You'll see in the second column that is increase over what you have now. You've not updated your fees for quite some time. I did catch a piece of the conversation earlier that, you know, sometimes we're hesitant. We're trying to make sure that we generate the type of growth, and then all of a sudden we realize, oh, construction just tripled, and now we're behind again. So every client I have right now is updating their fees, and they are at least doubling, and that is simply a reflection of the cost of construction. And it's a big increase because you haven't been increasing them, you know, significantly every year. So you basically just had this conversation about water, I think. What I do want to call to your attention is the exhibits 7.2, the impact fee comparisons, which you probably can't read. But you'll notice the city of Boise is getting prepared in the next month to increase their fees to $10,800. Total fees. Nampa, $8,000, Meridian, $7,300, and they haven't even updated theirs yet. So when you look across the entire, you know, the question is, what if we're not competitive anymore? Impact fees actually do not make people build or not build. There's a lot of other factors that would require that. Certainly impact fees can affect whether or not affordable housing is built, and you have in your ordinance the ability to exempt affordable housing in the same way that you exempt building fees for economic development. But when I look at these, you're at the lower end of the pack, and particularly as we're just looking through the Southwest Idaho band there. To me, I don't see a measurable. You're still very competitive compared to these other communities. If a builder were looking, should I build here or here, it has more to do with the price of land than it does the impact fees. So that's it. How fast was that?
Ms. Mayor,
That's pretty good.
I have a couple questions Ann, sorry. I think impact fees are very important, so growth pays for itself, so I'm all for implementing them. I only worry about, do we put them all on the table at once at 100%? Or do some cities split it up and say 40% this year, 60% next year, we're at 100?
Excellent question. Everyone asks that question.
Okay.
I mean, you are unique, of course, but everyone asks that question because it's very important to kind of soften that increase, right?
And I don't want to prohibit growth that's coming about.
Right. So a different way to look at it might be, one of the things we don't want to do is people who've already gotten their construction financing and are in the pipeline, this is kind of that's a big change.
Yep.
So a lot of my clients, we put in something that says, if you're this far in the plat, permit, whatever process, you're grandfathered, you pay the old ones. Because we don't really know, if that's going to slow things down or not. Some clients do like to do that kind of slow. I have never seen it make any difference doing it that way or not. I think giving the development community a heads up that it's happening, maybe implementing it, it usually goes into effect 30 days after adoption. You could say 60 days and we'll really make sure people know what's happening.
Okay.
But you certainly could adopt them in a phased. It's just that as you phase it, you're basically subsidizing with tax dollars in order to do that, which is a policy decision.
Ms. Mayor, two more questions. What about the dynamic nature of population growth or decrease, and the dynamic nature of the market, the volatility of something can grow 9% this month, 9% next month, et cetera, et cetera?
I love the fact that you smile while you're asking all your questions. I've been sitting right there watching you for the last 3 hours.
People are getting angry because I'm asking too many, sorry.
So you think smiling is going down?
It's always low.
Excellent question again. If I've done my job right, which I always do, there is a nexus between the house and the fee. How much does every house put a demand on the system? So I'm imagining this absorption is even over 10 years, and it's not going to be. Absent a major apocalypse, at which point you would not be collecting building permits or fees at all. If you grow slower than I have anticipated, You will have less growth, you will raise less revenue, but you will also not need to put as much capital in. If you grow much faster than that, things will double up. So as it goes up and down and up and down over the 10 years, everyone still pays their correct share. If things get too far off, like if all of a sudden, there is a bubble burst and we go 5 years with nothing, that's why we look at it every year. And if we feel like things are really slowing down, we might constrain that CIP again. But usually when you get the right relationship, it will just continue to go with the market cycles.
Okay, and one last question. When does the Development Impact Fee Advisory Committee recommend the City Council adopt these? And this might be a joint question for you and Brock.
I'm going to give it to Ann.
Oh, thanks. That question was not posed to them, and so we'd have to, call them together to ask them. But I think, this was October that was the last time they looked at it. So I think basically they were saying, here's what our recommendation is, specifically also that we break out parks, and we're now turning it over to you to make the best decision.
Okay, thanks, Sam.
So it goes to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brock, goes to City Council, or goes to P&Z.
So from
And
what
then
I've been
again-
instructed, in order to implement them, we're going to have to amend our comprehensive plan.
It's a text amendment, so you're basically just saying, yes, all these exhibits are consistent with our comp plan, it's just a normal P&Z hearing. Then it would come back to you for a fee hearing.
Yeah. And the text amendment would go to both P&Z and then.
Right,
this
then it
body
gets
for final
approved
decision.
by you.
So there's some moving pieces.
Council Brad.
And a couple of things as well. Do I understand correctly that every builder within the city limits of Mountain Home will also have to pay the county's jail and ambulance service impact fee?
It could be possible. That's what I've been hired to do. So, you're right. People in Mountain Home would not pay sheriff, but paramedic and jail would be the two that would be eligible. Paramedic fees generally are really small because, for example, in Ada County, they came out to about $160 per household because it's spread out by everyone in the county. Same for jail. They tend to be, it will not be as high as any of your fees, those fees.
Are you saying, is that kind of the estimate?
That's an estimate. I haven't even, I
Crunch those
just
numbers up.
started the study, so
Okay. And when you do get those numbers, could you share them with us?
absolutely.
Because how does that work when the county assesses them? They pull a building permit with us. Do we have to collect the fee on behalf of the county?
The county will come to you and ask you to engage in an intergovernmental agreement where you will collect on their behalf and disperse the money to them, ask them to pay you an administrative fee for doing that. That's very normal. We've got this going like this all over the state because we have fire districts asking cities and counties. I mean, we're just not set up in this state for it to make much sense. So this is the complicated but legal way of doing it.
Thank you. And then what our council is facing, again, I don't always pick the right words here, so bear with me, please, but harsh criticism over the differences between single family and multifamily. And can you give me a quick 2-minute
Absolutely.
of
And 2 means 20, right?
yeah, whatever, I don't care. I mean, but help me understand how
Yes.
multifamily pays differently, or should they pay less, or can they pay significantly less?
There are-
And the impact on how does an apartment have less of an impact than a house?
I have my own opinion based on my own 20 years of practice. Other people have different opinions. I believe that there is usually not enough empirical evidence in an Idaho city to show that the police or fire or parks responds differently or requires differently from single or multi. And I'm afraid to make, I'm not an economist, which makes me not smart enough to split everything out. I just say, let's make it simple, let everyone be equal. You could call 911 at any time and you could go to any park, where no matter what size, because we don't actually know how many people are living in each house. In Mountain Home, it might be more empirical, we might have data. In other places, it's kind of backwards from what we might have grown up thinking about. So I tend to not want to make extra assumptions that I don't have any data for. if the, I'm starting with some of my larger clients to ask them to start collecting call data based on the land use so that we can start tracking that.
Like the sheriff's dispatch or what?
In Ada County, for example, I've asked Boise Fire, Boise Police, can you, when you respond to a call, say it's an apartment, it's just so that we begin to get a baseline. So I tend to try to create less litigation for my client. I just think every time you make another assumption, you can be wrong. But more and more communities are making that assumption. Boise, for example, has me split the fees out into 5 different sizes of household, based on their assumption that there are 5 different normal amounts of people in them. It all ends up whole, but it obviously then if it's not one fee, it's going to be much higher on a larger house and much smaller on a smaller house. And I don't particularly have any personal opinion about what is the right way. I just tend in a community where I don't have empirical evidence to prefer to aggregate. But that is your choice.
But in your report, you separate the road, streets.
Oh, excellent point. You
Right.
almost got me there. Because I do have empirical evidence. Because there is empirical evidence about how much each kind of land use, how many trips they put on the roads.
Where
So
was
the International
difference?
Transportation Engineering Organization puts out, and there's a, where is it? It's in here somewhere. It's at the top of page 28. So you can see for single family, multi-family units, we know actual math that says a single family unit puts 1.43 trips out on the road. A single family only 0.76. We could take Ada County Highway District, for example, takes its non-residential and breaks it out into about 40 different categories, making everyone mad. And I tend to not try to do that. But so for streets, we know how, there's good data that says how much, and so I can break it out in that way. In parks, I can totally buy that a bigger house might have more people, and that would be more people in the park. But I could also say apartments might not have as much open space, they don't have their own private yard, so they might use parks more. I just don't know. So it can be broken out or aggregated, and that is a policy decision for you.
I guess, and finally, the about what Councilman Stokes said is like we don't want to push developers away, and you made a comment that the impact fees won't do that. I guess I'm interested in your evidence behind that.
I suppose there's a difference between will people say they will and is there empirical evidence that it ever has happened.
And real quick, sorry. And following up is that our town is about to explode with multifamily development, and can I say that those developers will walk away over these fees? I don't know, but
Right.
but for for a fourplex, right? Is that considered multifamily?
Yes.
Or a
Per
16-plex?
unit, yes.
That's $4,500 per door, and that gets wildly expensive. Prohibitive almost, maybe.
Well, and so that's the question. Yes, you have to decide in your market at what point will people leave. But the next question is, and so what does that mean to the city? So if you desperately need multifamily because it's affordable housing, you have an ability to pay on their behalf to have affordable housing. If you desperately need housing, you could choose not to have impact fees, understanding that everyone buying that house plus everyone who lives in your city will have to pay for that growth, and that's completely fine too. There are no studies of impact fees are empirically connected with the fastest growing communities. So if the land is cheap and there's good transportation, schools, community quality, whatever, those are the things that people make a decision. Well, as a developer, will I say this will turn me away? I might, and it might. That developer might not want to do that, which is why it would be more concerning perhaps if you were the only community in southern Idaho doing impact fees. You are the least expensive impact fee in southern Idaho. So, I mean, even the
Right now, or with your new numbers?
with these you will be. So that chart that I showed you still are at the very bottom. So if I'm CBH and I'm building in Boise, I mean, CBH just spent $36 million on a parcel of land there. I think they might be doing okay. But again, that doesn't matter. They will decide when their margin has been compromised. They have not stopped building in Ada County. You are starting to see those large proposals that are coming in. It's funny because the best conversation I ever had about this was here in Mountain Home about 10 or 12 years ago. And there were some home builders who were very upset, saying, we're not going to be able to afford to build here anymore. And the mayor said something that, again, there's no wrong or right answer, but he said, I'm here to represent the interests of the citizens of Mountain Home. I'm not a job placement agency. And I'd never heard of it that way, and it was like, oh, that's interesting. So it's really in your community who's hurting more, right? Is it your taxpayers that are tired of paying for growth? Is it the developers who are concerned they're not going to be able? If you don't have anywhere to house the people in your community, right. So there are ways that you can address your most serious needs more surgically through the ordinance so we just won't charge. And I mean, because I suppose if I pay $300,000 for a condo, I don't know where is the price point anymore, right? I couldn't afford to buy my house. Where is the price point where you're going to lose people, and which people are most important? Often people are asking this question about the non-residential. Oh, well, what if we want a marathon or we want a whatever? Again, for non-residential economic development, people will say it's about number 8 or 9 on the list of things we're worried about, because they also want the infrastructure to be able to continue to build. Amazon paid something like, I don't know, $20 million in impact fees in Nampa. I mean, they didn't seem to care.
Councilman McCain?
The last time that she was talking about back 2008 or so, I would imagine somewhere in there, 2007, when the first one that we implemented, I didn't notice any contractor quit because of that.
I just have one comment that we heard at the state level. Who was it? Senator?
I think it was Rice.
He said impact fees, he's working with the Ada County Highway District, are a clear, concise, predictable way to pass the costs on to growth without burdening the current citizenship. So you're not going to burden the current people, but you are going to pass it on.
And the builders are going to pass it on. And so again, it's what is the market for real estate in Mountain Home? That is unique to you. So
back when the first time we did this, we were showing that for I don't remember how many acres per 1,000 people that we had, and we were like 3 times that amount. Did that ever get changed to where, because that's why we eliminated parks altogether on the last one, because we had over, I don't remember how much acreage
you had
over
8.5,
what
right?
we
It's
needed,
a very high level.
what we had set in the comp plan.
Which is why in this one you'll see there's no buying of land. There are no new parks. It's just investment in your existing parks to provide more restrooms, more courts, more.
Well, I do see that we have something here, because we have the squash pad, update the tennis courts. I don't know, pickleball court. We don't have that.
It doesn't.
Those are the zero.
Those are
No,
amenities.
this is 50. That's still 50%.
But if we add, sorry.
The level of service of 8.5 acres per 1,000 is just acres.
Right.
And that doesn't really even mean much about a community. So investing in amenities is much cheaper than buying, greening up, and then irrigating.
Oh yeah, no, I agree 100%. I just was.
Yes.
Everybody's been talking about
We've
the comp
addressed
plan.
that
I just wanted to
problem.
make sure our comp plan was in.
Yes, I think this is a more
With
fiscally
this.
sustainable way to provide quality amenities to your community without more more watering grass.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Councilman Stokes.
Last question, I promise.
Yeah, right.
Where in the process of the application and the building and stuff do you recommend that you draw that line of you're fine now? Just 2 words. Give me 2 words.
Now we're limiting you.
I have no words.
It's over the 2-word limit.
Building
I
permit.
can give you language that other cities have used.
Okay, perfect.
And usually,
Throw
I
it
mean,
to
it's
that.
obviously after plat and before building
Okay.
permit. So you can, working with your building official, where is it that it's going to make a difference in their pro forma?
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, council.
I have one question.
Oh my God.
And I just want to clarify on your Exhibit 7-2, just to caveat off of Councilman Brennan's jail, sheriff, and EMS. City of Boise, those numbers are pretty accurate and going across.
Accurate?
Like, or these are what you're projecting Boise to do?
This is right now.
Okay, so
Yeah.
there you go. There's.
What numbers are you pointing out?
If you look at her
On
exhibit.
this chart that you can't read because it's so small, at the very bottom you can see that mountain homes are projected at 5,500. Boise next month will adopt 10,008. Nampa just adopted 8,000, or actually there's one more public hearing.
But specifically, Councilman Brennan, if you look at the jail for City of Boise, it's coming in at $715.
$715?
Yeah. Yes.
And paramedics is 181.
Is 181. So when you asked what the county's impact fees potentially could be,
I see what you're saying.
If you look across this chart of all the other cities,
I don't have that box with all the grayed out boxes. Are we looking at the same chart?
There you go. Yeah.
Hers is grayed out.
But actually, I would say, remember, Ada County is building a $45 million pod. I do not think Elmer County is building
Exactly.
a $45 million. I don't think it would be that high.
tell him is these numbers are across the board equal.
Okay.
So if our county comes in.
If you
somewhere
added
else-
another $1,000 because of the county, I would be very surprised it would be that high.
So that's all I was trying
Mayor.
to.
Councilman McKay.
And I would even recommend that rather than doing this at building permit time, I would recommend that it's done at occupancy. For the building, before he gets occupancy, they get it, but they have to pay for it. That gives them a chance to build it, and it's not killing them right off the bat.
I agree with the attorney.
I know. I know you're not going to agree with me. I know.
And I have so enjoyed working with you.
And no more, you don't now, huh?
It was a good 12-year run. I think that's pretty good.
All right, council members. Any other questions? All right, and thanks for coming and hanging out with the gang. It's almost 10 o'clock.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out,
Wendy's
waiting.
is still open, so I have to make it.
And for the record, planners that sat in that chair talked more than the lawyers tonight, okay?
Yeah, but I'm going to.
Planners always do.
I didn't tell you where I was going, so I do remember though that there is a decision to be made as to whether or not you want to break out parks. If you get ready to go ahead, you'll need to make that decision before you do, because that will need to be reflected in
Break it out. Why would we break it out?
a single-family, multifamily.
that's right,
What
okay.
advisory committee
Okay.
has suggested, but that's just the only thing that's not in my report as finalized.
Okay, thanks,
Right,
Ann.
okay.
Appreciate you.
Drive safe.
Thanks,
Ann.
Ann. Good to see you again.
All right.
You don't like me no more.
I didn't say I didn't like you. I just said I liked you better before.
All right, we'll go to new business, action item number 5, set a public hearing date for new fees for zoning verification letters.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Stokes.
I read Mr. Cherry's letter here. It seems appropriate. It looks like a lot of other cities are charging anywhere from $42 to $250 for the zoning verification letters. I just make a motion to set a public hearing date for February 28th and set the fee at $50.
Second.
No, Tiffany's saying no.
Oh, no.
You can't do the 28th because it won't make it in the paper. At least we try to do at least 2 times.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to amend my
Go to
motion.
the next council meeting.
Yeah,
So
let's
yeah, you have to go to the March
14th.
March 14th.
March 14th.
I amended it.
Thank
So
you.
make
You
your
want to
motion,
amend that,
please.
Becky?
What's that?
You want to amend yours? Your second?
Oh, I amend my
So you want to, so you,
We both kind of satisfied that.
Same time, yeah.
I'd like to amend my motion to March 14th and still set all the parameters by interlineation, $50 per request.
do I have a second?
Second.
The motion and second. Any further discussion?
I'm good.
Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Councilwoman Garvey?
Aye.
Councilman Brennan?
Aye.
Councilman Stokes?
Aye.
Councilman Kane?
Aye.
We'll run down to item number 6, action item. Set a public hearing date for the proposed fee increases for resident cards at the library. So you want to do the
Same day.
same 14th?
I'll make a motion to set that for March 14th.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Brennan?
to discuss this increase, can we do that before the public hearing? What's the appropriate timing for us to discuss these fees? Now
I would
or
ask your question now to staff.
no?
Do you want to come down real quick?
Yeah, sure.
I'm not exactly sure what all my questions are, Shasta.
No
Sorry.
problem, no problem.
And
So it's technically not considered a fee due to the fact that it is for non-residents. And it's just basically comparing it to what people who live within city limits pay for their library card. So it's just that comparison for them to be able to have a library card.
is their fee more simply because they're not paying into the general fund for taxes that support the library?
Right.
Is that bottom line what
Right.
that is?
Right, and that is across the board as far as all libraries in Idaho.
Okay.
Okay, we got a motion and second. Or sorry, Council, you got any more questions?
The percent of increase, the math, I guess, I kind of reviewed that real quick, but that kind of goes with our inflation numbers we're talking about, maybe, right?
Right.
Okay, all right, no, I'm good.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Councilman Kane?
Aye.
Councilman Stokes?
Aye.
Councilwoman Garvey?
Aye.
Councilman Brennan?
Aye.
Item number 7, set a date for the council to have a town hall meeting.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Stokes?
are we talking about having city council have a town hall, or are we talking about a workshop here?
That, sorry, Mayor.
Go ahead, Tim.
At the last meeting, there was discussion on, the audience requested you guys to have a town hall meeting, and you said, yeah, that's a great idea, so.
Because they couldn't talk at regular meetings, because they were here to listen, not talk, so they wanted to be able to talk.
I put the item on there so I wouldn't forget. And so here we are.
Mr. Mayor, I'd be totally okay with it as long as all the department heads showed up.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
if I may interject on behalf of the department heads, I think we would be more than fine to. However, all of you have seen the behavior of recent people on controversial items. And as department heads, we take a lot of brunt of it. We're willing to do our job, but we're not exactly excited to go into a meat grinder and then have city council stand by and watch it happen. If you want to go in as partners, I think we can do that. But you have to sit next to us and answer hard questions with us, because you found out today governing's hard, and I'm willing to do it together with you, but doing it alone, I don't think any department head would want to do that.
And I think the constituents wanted the council, right?
Mhm.
Not the department heads. They just wanted council.
They wanted council, not department heads.
I would agree with that.
Any department head that wanted to show up, I wouldn't have a problem with it, but I don't think it would be right to tell them to show up.
Right.
Because that wasn't what they came for.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to retract my previous statement.
Okay.
Apologies.
Councilman Brennan?
Paul, what's the word I'm looking at? What does a town hall meeting look like in terms of the council being together and open meeting laws and whatnot?
Well, it's noticed up like any other, it's a public meeting. So a town hall is a public meeting, it just doesn't have the structured agenda.
Notes have to be taken, or minutes?
There is not necessarily minutes. Minutes are not required to be taken. Generally, you're like smiling at yourself. Because there's no action items. There isn't, it's kind of, whatever you guys want to talk about, that's not fine. You can do that, but no, there's no public testimony. There's no, it's Robert's Rules of Order. are non-existent, that's relaxed. So it's just an ability to interact. Sometimes you're not even up there. Like when it's planning meetings, for example, like Brock will know this, you'll have maps around the room, saying here's what we think the comprehensive plan should be in the next 20 years, and you guys are interacting and mingling as well. You could have it that way, or you could have it a little bit more formal. It's all up to you guys.
At what point in our comments in the town hall meeting can be used as like facts, or they say you said on the town hall that you did, and we're speaking as individuals and not as council members, because I know that'll happen eventually, where they're going to be like, well,
I would probably stay away. Well, I know you definitely should stay away for anything that is a pending application or imminently likely to be an application, and stay away from specifics, because if you say to the public, well, I would never want that to be annexed into the city or something like that, and I would vote no on that, then now you've created a bias / predetermination, which could be, read back to you later, and that would probably require you to recuse yourself from whatever that was later. If it's a specific thing, if it's more generic, saying I think we should develop on the east side of town, not the west side of town, then that's fine. That's just that's a policy that you're.
I kind of agree with Brock. This will become a dangerous thing if we do it.
It is.
Yes, it is.
So,
What we're open, Mayor?
You know what? Let's just quit the Robert's Rules order here real quick, and you guys have a discussion on this one.
What we're doing, if we have a town hall meeting, what it is they want to talk. They want to chew us out for something, is what it's going to come down to. Because they're not going to like anything we say.
Just have
is what it's going to be. That's what I see is the town hall meeting's going to come out to. It's not going to be as structured. It's going to be just, well, I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this. Why don't you guys do this?
Just to give an example, you've probably seen on the news 1,000 times, like in New England and places like that, about town hall meetings regarding COVID and what to do. That's what that's extreme, but some of that stuff, that's what you're looking at potentially. But that's what the public wants, and that's what you want to do. Okay.
I'm totally open to the idea.
I just don't know how productive it will be.
Yeah, it's not going to be productive.
I feel like I did tell them that I would entertain that, and so moving forward, I guess I would let them talk, and I probably won't say much back, right? Because they'll use it against you later type thing. So
the hybrid, of course, is workshops. Where it's a little bit more structured. There definitely is a subject matter.
A workshop with a
I
subject
think
matter,
that went
yes.
well.
That would be fine.
It did go.
Yeah.
The workshop
town
we
hall
had
meeting,
went really
the
well.
bit chat, no.
Good job, Tiffany.
Yeah.
I think the workshop went really
Yeah.
well.
We
Yes.
did.
No.
Yes.
Mayor, when I was up there, we did have some different things. Like I know we had coffee with the mayor, and like they used to have something with coffee with the mayor.
We did that. 3 times?
Yeah, and then, but we did it even before. But maybe I think usually
did a town
maybe
hall
one council meeting, one
school.
councilman was kind of with him. Just we just kind of spread it out. So those are different things you could do to kind of get some extra, just to get out there.
I wouldn't have a bit of a problem with something like that, but because you got some type of structure, it's not somebody just coming up and just wanting to lay into you because they can't talk in a normal meeting. They're here to listen, not to interject.
You get a couple mayor and a council and say, hey, here's some things we have coming up, and you just kind of give a little spiel of things that are going on in the city, and then ask a few questions, and you kind of limit it. Say, hey, this is an hour, have coffee with everybody, try to see what's going on.
Right.
Those are things you could say.
Right. Sorry, I'm not politically correct. I'm not sugarcoating it to where that's what it would be.
Sure, coffee, giving these a stimulant, really?
Well, you spread out different times of the day. I mean, you could have, beer with them.
Can we schedule this via email with the clerk?
Say, I don't even know my dates right now.
So we want to push it
I've
off
got
to the next
a whole
meeting?
bunch
March or April?
Can we push it off to the next meeting?
Do you want to, I think right now the consensus is let's test the work groups, right?
Yes.
And if we want to even consider, maybe we do something later on. So I'm going to put this out in June. And maybe remember it, or July to come back.
Well, put it up when we have something to discuss. Just to, okay, let's find something to discuss.
All right.
Is not as ridiculous.
Can someone tell me they don't want to do it?
the work
I wanna
group,
do
though,
it.
is a pending or imminently likely thing to happen, right?
What's that?
A working group, if sorry, if we're there discussing something that the council's about to do, wait, it's not about council doing, it's about the citizens bringing an application, is that right?
Yeah, well, I mean, what I was concerned for you about is when, certain members of the public are cornering you about what's gonna happen on the intersection of Main and Dot. And you are aware that there's about to be an application there.
Oh.
And you can listen to them about it, but, well, what are you gonna do? Well, I'm going to listen to the evidence as it's presented, that kind of thing.
Okay.
That's the only thing I'm worried about. But you are going to do things like that if they're talking about, well, how are you going to develop, the rail lines and stuff like that? Because those are, growth of the city and stuff like that.
It's going to be happening.
Yeah.
We're
So that will come up. Things like that will come up, and you should talk about that.
Will the citizens be able to talk to us at the working group meetings?
Yes, that's the whole point of the workshop.
Yeah, you suspended them last time. Yeah, we
That's why I said it's
suspended
kind of a
them.
hybrid.
That's right,
Yeah, and we just talked openly. I thought it worked great.
I do.
So can you give me a motion to table or not do this then? Because it says action.
I'll make a motion to table it.
I second it.
So it's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Councilman Kane.
Aye.
Councilman Brennan.
Aye.
Councilman Stokes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Garvey.
Aye.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, really quick, and I know you guys are all going to hate me, but I was really needing next steps as far as impact fees. I know we have some members in some diehard fans who stayed this entire time. They should get a T-shirt or something.
I survived.
But I believe there's some concern in the development community whether or not we're just going to begin processing this at the city council. I mean, not at the city council level, at the planning and zoning level, or if there's going to be any other workshops. And that's kind of what the answer I wanted was, given the information Anna's given you, how much do we further engage the development community, or do we start initiating hearing processes?
We start initiating hearing process.
I say start initiating.
Yeah.
Because we're running money down the drain right now.
And
the one we have set up right now, residential houses don't pay.
And for every house you approve,
correct,
now your level of service is going down,
right,
down,
and getting subsidized by
and
the
just
taxpayer.
because I wear the economic development hat, and I appreciate my community partners. If there is a developer that is concerned, I want to invite them. They can make comments to my office, and can they make comments to the city council as well?
About what, the impact fees?
Public hearing.
Yeah, well, I mean, they should be doing that at a public hearing, but I mean, they're gonna do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna happen anyway.
So I guess from what I'm hearing from the council is go ahead there and do good work with P&Z, have it go through that whole process, and then bring it to the council. Is that what I'm hearing, council?
That's what I heard, yeah.
Okay.
Understood. All right. For the
Oh, Mayor, one more thing. Tiff, could you please get a copy to all the council for that?
I have this.
Do you? Okay. I just want, that's what I got, about 5 years ago or so for putting a new roof on here.
Oh.
You all like the paper.
And it gives pros and cons for everything, the flat roof and everything to wear, so it's.
That's great, we like.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Do you want your paper again?
Yeah. That way I wouldn't have one.
Meeting adjourned.